Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Mark Lefebvre. He is a content creator and an online community builder, whatever that means. Well, actually, that is the content of our convo, is to get into what online community can be, is, and fails to be, because human beings are fallible, if you hadn't realized that by now. I stumbled upon him because he was criticizing somebody that I was into criticizing. I have this whole thing about the salty stick, and there are certain people online that just attract you to feel displeasure in them for some reason. It's a bad habit. But, we shared a common foe or enemy or critique, and stumbled deeper into his work, found some really cool ideas, which you can find linked below. And I'm going to get out of the way so you can listen to him yourself. Without further ado, here is Mark Lefebvre.
Hello.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing better now that I'm here with you. That's for sure.
Oh, you're a sweet talker.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So
yeah, I just I don't know. I don't recall exactly how I stumbled upon you. I think you were perhaps being a little snarky on the internet, but maybe...
Me? People snarky on the internet? What are you talking about? It's crazy talk right there. Yeah. Well, I've known about you for a while, and I'm always a little puzzled as to what Paul Van der Klay is doing and who he's promoting instead of other people like me that he could be promoting. We have what I would argue are better messages for the world, but it is what it is. Something's going on.
Have you interacted with him?
I've talked to Paul many times. I was on his first ever live stream.
Oh, wow.
He has those randos conversations. I was never a rando. Every once in a while, that team will be like, "You're a rando." I'm like, I was never a rando. I want to talk to Paul. I just reach out to him and we talk. Like, I don't need to be put on a schedule.
Yeah.
But I was on the Discord server that Joey Antonucci formed for him, right? And he used to come on the Discord server all the time. And so would you we'd talk, so because he'd come on and chat, and you didn't spend a lot of time there because he doesn't have a lot of time to spend. But when he'd come in, and then of course other people would join, and so I've been hanging out with those guys for 5 years on and off. It's just
really?
The environment over there has changed. Yeah, there was a big, and you know about the Thunder Bay event in Thunder Bay, Canada that happened?
Was that recently or a few years ago?
No, it was a few years ago.
Okay.
But that was their first big sort of gathering event.
With Peugeot and Vervaeke?
Peugeot and Vervaeke were there. Paul Van der Klay was there. And then a local guy was there to round things out. And it was a lovely event. That was the first big event. And then Catherine, who put that on, eventually helped them with their Chino event, which was a similar sort of thing. And now they've got all these rolling, but they're all kind of based on Joey's original Jordan Peterson meetup group. That's where Paul got most of these ideas from, right? And the Discord community and things like that. So all of this, especially for me, formed on Discord, really. That's where it sort of coalesced and came together.
What was your internet life historically?
So unlike most people, I grew up online in a very unique way long before the internet. So I was at bulletin boards. Most of my oldest friends, all of my oldest friends I met online, all of them. There's no exceptions to that rule. So I didn't go to college, so I didn't have any college friends.
You skipped college.
Yeah. I deliberately said, hell no, I'm not, this is a bad deal. I'm not doing it. And that was, years before it became obvious to everybody else will say that this is a bad idea. But I had been reading a book called None of the Above, and I don't remember the author. I read it when I was 16, so it was quite a while ago. And that was about how, these SAT scores are great, and the SAT tests are great, but basically the people writing the questions are of average or below intelligence, and sometimes they get these things wrong, and this is what we're using to base college admissions on. And so maybe this isn't a good idea, And so I was I was skeptical about this stuff from the beginning, and it was just starting to get expensive back then. And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I told Paul this actually because I've done a couple talks with Paul on his channel. I told him, I said, oh, if they had told me you could get a PhD in 2 years, I would have done it. But they were like, oh no, you got to go to school for like 6 years, and I'm like, nothing takes me 6 years, nothing. It's not
Hmm.
happening.
Hmm.
I could do anything. I could rebuild the universe in 6 years. You guys are not, because I just, especially when I was young, before I got
Well, you're
sick
not
and stuff.
quite God because he only takes 7 days
Right,
or
right. No, he'd
six.
do much faster. Right. So, but I mean, I just moved fast and I did things fast and I learned fast. And, you know, I
Hmm.
was very into speed when I was younger. I was very, very quick at pretty much everything. So I
Are
was like,
you
I'm not getting a PhD in 6, 10 years. Screw that.
were you born before or after the bicentennial?
Before.
Okay, so you're a bit older than me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little bit older than you.
You're
Yeah.
certainly Gen X. That's why I can grok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you diverted from college and just started doing the serial entrepreneurial thing?
No, I before I graduated high school, I got abandoned and made homeless effectively,
Okay.
which was really not fun. I don't recommend. And some people are like, try everything. I'm like, no, don't try that. Don't sleep in your car in New England in the winter. It's not a good thing. You just don't even get on that road.
Wow.
But that's what happened to me. I mean, I had already made the decision not to go to college and stuff, but my parents had already been divorced, and you know, my father got remarried, and then basically that was the end of me. I was basically thrown to the side. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah, yeah. I mean, promises, right? Like, oh, the new house, we're going to build you an entrance, and you know, and then when I needed someplace to go because I was fresh out of high school, that wasn't available, and I was like, well, it's kind of betrayal there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
I
plus you
didn't
have
sort
to.
of see it that way at first, right? So I went off and lived in Boston, in Somerville, which at the time had the highest per capita artists and musicians in the world, and used to vie for Mexico City for the most people in the smallest area, right? For the most population density. Somerville, Mass was an interesting place back then,
Mm,
right? So I lived with a bunch of dirty, smelly, druggy hippies out there, some of whom I appreciate to some extent, but it it was a weird environment to sort of grow up in. And a lot of those people, you know, they taught me real logic, right? They're almost all of them were older than me.
hmm,
They were all LARPing being homeless or poor. They were
mhm.
all from wealthy families, not even upper middle class, but typically, uh,
Trustafarians.
yeah. Well, and you know, Harvard Square, where I spent a lot of time in Harvard Square back in the day, like a lot.
Hmm.
That was full of quote homeless people too, but it's Cambridge. Nobody in Cambridge is poor. What do you? One of the wealthiest places around, you know.
Hmm.
So, yeah, they were all LARPing, being homeless too, and that was a very common thing to go down to Harvard Square, and you know, you're trying to relate to these people, like, oh, I was homeless, and now I kind of, you know, sort of, I'm renting a room in this sketchy house with these sketchy people in a very sketchy neighborhood, you know, with none of which bothered me at all. I'm perfectly at home in the worst neighborhoods in cities. That doesn't, I can walk through, you know, the worst drug neighborhood in Boston at 2 a.m. and no one's going to bother me because I know how to do it. You know, there's a
Hmm.
certain way you got to hold yourself,
Yeah.
and I was trained in martial arts,
Were you
so
particularly ambitious at that time of life?
not at that time. No, I mean, I had lost my whole world, and so I was, you know, just trying to rebuild. I didn't even know what happened to me. To some
Yeah.
extent, I mean, at some level, my mother, unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. Um, she's very, very disturbed, right? I don't know what mental illness or illnesses she had,
Hmm.
but she certainly had a different view on the world, and one which, you know, to a large extent, I didn't appreciate or know about until when she was dying of cancer and she couldn't maintain her fictions anymore. It
Hmm.
became really clear that she's amazing in the level of fiction she can maintain and how coherent and deep Because to find somebody who's lying, you got to like ask them detailed questions, right? Usually it reveals pretty quick. Most people aren't very sophisticated. They can't hold together a false narrative, that's very deep. My mother could. She could really, really hold together a really complex narrative. And you couldn't tell that, and she knew things to this day that I don't understand how anybody could know those things, but she was bang on about a bunch of stuff that
about history or physics or what domain?
Now, I mean, she would know things about society and culture and things that were going on. Like she'd know like, oh, that actor is gay. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but and
Okay.
like, oh, this person's hiding this sort of a thing, and this politician is into this. And I was always like, I don't know. How did you get this information?
She's like a keeper of secrets or a susser of secrets.
The susser of secrets. Yeah. She, and on the other hand, she's deeply insecure. And I didn't discover that until, so she had moved down to South Carolina, because I grew up mostly in New England and in Lowell and Boston, right? She moved down to South Carolina just before she died, like five years before she died. So maybe 6 or 7 years before she passed away. And, we had gotten lost going to the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is the closest large airport to Columbia, where she was living. And it was foggy, and a plane came through the fog, as planes do when you're below we were just below the runway. Actually, we didn't know where we were at the time, but like the evidence is we were just below the runway on the other side, and about 100 feet below it or something. It's just above us, and it's foggy, and the plane comes in, and she saw it, and I did not, because I was looking at my phone because we were lost, and I was trying to figure out, no, I can't get to the terminal that way. We need to go some other way. And she was very upset that I didn't see the plane. And I was like, it's just a plane. We're at an airport. I'm going to see another one. In fact, I'm going to be on one here in a little bit.
Wait, she was upset not that you didn't get hit by a plane, but that you didn't notice?
She was upset because she didn't know if that's something that other people could see. And that was the revelation I had. I went, she has no idea when she's looking at something if other people also see that thing. And I was just blown away by that revelation, for lack of a better term. I was like, oh my goodness, and it put a bunch of things in context for my interactions, with her growing up. Like, I see. Yeah. This is, this is why you're like this. And she would dodge it. So like, she had a very bad relationship with her family for no reason, as far as I can tell. Most of that, not all of it certainly, but most of it was in her head. Her brother was really torn up that they didn't get along for whatever reason, and she wasn't getting along with her mother, and like when I tried to get like her mother and her back together and stuff like that, there was no discussion to be had, right? She's just like, no. It was after what she did to me, and I would be like, okay, what did she do? Like, just, I'm curious, like, what happened? I don't know about this. She wouldn't even answer me, right? It's just non-negotiable. But I suspect nothing happened.
When you figured this out about your mother, did it make you question your own perception of reality and how you process things? Did you have to do some reverse engineering for your
Never.
own state?
No. Look, go be homeless for a while and starving. You let me know if you have a problem discerning reality. I mean, one of the things that really bothers me is when guys like Dr. Vervaeke, who, otherwise I love and respect, was an excellent teacher to me, online, though it may have been. He says things like, well, we can't know reality. And I'm like, okay, listen, I'm sorry to hear you have that problem. That is not a we problem. I do not have anything like that problem. And while maybe when I was much younger, I might have had an issue with that. Believe me, you starve in a car in the winter in New England, you're not going to have any problems understanding reality. That's not going to happen to you.
From a Vervaekean perspective, you could extend that statement. You can't know reality, not just to your physical or your immediate life situation, but to what extent can we actually grok with 2K's reality?
Well, you can't experience all of reality. And since I'm of the belief that, you know, the only knowledge is experiential or participatory, as Dr. Vervaeke might call it. This isn't that hard to resolve. Yeah, we can't know all of reality. Okay, so what? I'm not interested. I'm not interested in all of reality. I don't have to live in all of reality.
Well,
All of reality may affect you, but
what
so
part
what?
of reality are you most interested in?
The parts that affect. I'm a pragmatist, so basically, I was explaining this to somebody yesterday. I said pragmatism resolves all kinds of things, right? Because you can look at anything and say, does it affect me? The war in Ukraine. No, it doesn't affect me. Okay, don't worry about it then, because you can't participate with it, right? If you can't participate with it at all, so it's not affecting you and you can't participate with it. I mean, they're not going to let me into the Ukrainian army to shoot or the Russian army to shoot people. That's not going to happen. And I'm not going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Why am I worrying about this? Like what? Because I have things that I have to worry about, right? Like I have to worry about like getting my tea ready for this conversation, and I have to think about my live stream later today, and like there's all these things that I have to do, right? And there's so many of them that wasting time worrying about Israel and Gaza, Ukraine and Russia, any number of the wars that have been going on my entire lifetime on the entire continent of Africa is taking away from that. But like I have more stuff that I want to do that I could participate in than I have time, energy, and attention for. So why am I worrying about these other things?
But insofar as you're a content creator, I assume that you're trying to talk about the world, maybe at the edge or something bigger than just your immediate surroundings. So how do you prioritize what to talk about or why even talk to people?
Well, that's really easy. If you'll allow me, and you're super polite, so I know you will anyway. I'm just going to jump back and sort of explain sort of where I'm coming from. So you see the rise of Jordan Peterson, right, which I was obviously affected by. I'm part of this Peterson sphere, which is petersonsphere.com website, by the way.
It's a website, not just free-floating IDW moniker.
No, that was always one of the problems with that. Also, the lunatic that came up with that term is still a lunatic, which has definitely been revealed. And if you don't believe me, on my channel, Mark of Wisdom Navigating Patterns, I've got a whole video breaking down his ARC talk and like why ARC even published that. I don't know, but
I was there for that. It was pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested if you watched it at the end in particular, because I paused it at a certain point since you were there, my observations about what the crowd looked like from the limited view I have versus what the crowd was, that would be interesting to hear from somebody who was there. So if you ever get a chance. So you have this rise, right, of this, Jordan Peterson in some ways corresponds with the rise of the internet as a cultural or social force, if you want to think of it that way, right?
In a particular iteration, because it had already been a cultural force, but he galvanized it in some way.
No, I think he brought it out of where it was, which was a cultural force in the underground online world.
Okay.
Into, there's people online that are super popular whose views are affecting the real world in a way that maybe was going on the whole time, but nobody noticed.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, you can go to a college campus and you can say Jordan Peterson, and they know who that is, even though nobody knew him before then. I mean, he was probably at Harvard when I was hanging out at Harvard Square, and I didn't know who he was then. So,
oh wow, okay,
who is this guy? Yeah, I mean, you taught at Harvard. Okay, fair enough. I dislike Harvard for many, many reasons. I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah,
talked to a lot of those people, right? So
Peterson made something that had been kind of nebulous concrete. Bringing just on a physical level or a material level.
I think he just brought it
those
to
talks
life.
that he did. A bunch of people would go to his talks in large droves. I was at several during his 12 tablets of life thing. And once you see that this is actually something real, it's not just something you're doing on your phone. And he, for some reason, charisma, divine intervention, he was the man to do that.
Well, he brought a bunch of things together. Like who else who was credible and authoritative gave any time to Pepe the Frog?
Hmm.
Right. And how did he do that? Like part of it was he grabbed Jonathan Peugeot, who I'm obviously a big fan of. I just finished listening to the latest Universal History. Um, you know, and this all comes out into the light. And this thing, so like one of the trends that had been going on for a long time that I was in the middle of because I was in Boston at the time and I'm a software engineer by trade, among other things, um, was this, online education thing that they had already tried. So around version one of that actually kind of failed. It
Yeah.
kind of flopped. A bunch of companies tried it and a bunch of companies failed. They were
Hmm.
following a pattern of Salman Khan and they didn't recognize that Khan Academy, the
Okay.
reason why it worked is because Salman Khan is a top 0.1% teacher, period. End of
Okay.
statement. That guy could teach anything to anyone, like he's amazing. And that doesn't mean that even Peterson, as much as I really appreciate his work, can do the same thing. You maybe he can, I don't know. I haven't seen him teach math. I bet he can't teach math as well as he can show the things that he does show well. So you have this, this burst, and I blame this on the fall of the fourth estate, right, which is the media
Media.
apparatus. Of course, I have a video on that goes over
Well,
that.
we're all part of that estate now.
Well, so if you take that thesis seriously, that the fourth estate fell at some point, and I have a timeline for that,
Hmm.
that I follow. How accurate it is, I don't know, because it's very hard to find people to talk about this stuff with. World War II consensus. It's hard to get good thinkers. It's easy to get crappy thinkers. It's hard to get good thinkers to talk about this stuff. So the fourth estate falls, and what takes its place is the internet. Specifically YouTube. Right? We have to be like YouTube definitely takes over the news sources, and then there's a big swell and a big collapse, and then Jordan Peterson comes in. Right? So that changes everything because he's an authority. He believes in the academy and institutions.
Mm.
He's a top 10% scientist, like legit researcher,
Hmm.
right? And he's a very popular teacher. How many really good researchers are very good teachers?
Hmm. Hmm.
Not many. So this guy is unusual. And he manages, after, from my understanding, several decades of trying to become, we'll say, noticed in the more popular arena, right? Because he was on Canadian local TV, their cable stuff and all that. Like he had been trying for years, and then he gets popular, and that causes like John Vervaeke, who's a colleague of his. They know each other. And the guys that were pushing for Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which is misnamed, it should be called Awakening to the Meaning Crisis. Um, to do that series, right? They're like, no,
Yeah.
if people love Peterson, they're going to love you more, right? And they didn't say exactly that to me, but that's basically what they said when I worked with the Vervaeke Foundation for about a year.
Okay.
That was their attitude about it, and I was like, let me explain to you why that can't be true. But yeah, it was
Wait, I'm sorry. I lost. What can't be true?
that if you like Peterson, you're going to love Vervaeke more, right?
Okay.
Because they're very different messages told in different. Like Peterson's teaching a class and talking to classmates. Awakening from the Meaning Crisis is done to a camera with a whiteboard.
It's a
No one
lecture.
else is there.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So
he's changed and developed it, but yeah, I found Vervaeke's first work absolutely astounding, just the breadth of it and the depth of it. And I love
Right.
how he reminds me of, I wonder if he'd be more Aristotle or Plato, but the way he gets so angry, or he sounds like he's angry because he's just so passionate about ideas. There's something very like old school academy, like.
Well, and he's not angry. He's passionate. This is one of
Yeah.
the things I suffer from. A lot of people like, you're angry. I'm like, no, I'm really passionate. If I was angry, people would be getting hit or things would be getting thrown or
Okay.
walls would be getting punched. Like,
Yeah.
it's not unambiguous. It's
Yeah.
like,
So Peterson initiated a chain reaction, and it goes in a
Yes.
variety of different ways. It goes toward the populist / sloppish side of things, and then it goes
content.
long form content. It
Long
can go
form content.
academic, or it can go to more
Academic.
Rogan or more Vervaeke. Like those are two trail-offs
Right.
for it.
Right. So all of this stuff comes together and coalesces, if you will, in Peterson.
Mhm.
right? And in that wake, you get a bunch of people looking at that pattern and then trying to follow it, right? And so you've got somebody like Pastor Paul Vanderklay. I've talked to Paul many hours on and off cameras, many hours at this point. Paul very much believes, to some extent, or used to believe, maybe he's changed a little bit. I don't follow him quite as closely anymore, that Peterson is basically Billy Graham, with some changes, because he's using purely secular language. This is something that Peugeot believes too, like, oh, he's got this bridging language. That is true, but it's not quite true enough to understand the Peterson phenomena, we'll say.
So Peterson, as Billy Graham, has a revival. He's bringing the country back, or the West back to...
He's bringing the West back and sending people to church. And then guys like Vanderklay look at that, and he's a pastor, and he's like, oh, I see what he's doing. But you know what? We've got better tools, we've got more experience, and we've got better language. So we can do that better. And it's like, well, the Christian apologists have been failing for decades. But if you think suddenly... you're going to, bring about
I don't
change.
know if Paul puts himself in the better camp, but he does have different tools. And I really appreciate the tools that he uses, that without those tools, people get untethered and become demagogues. They start speaking to an audience, but Paul really focuses on the human connection. And that really grounds his work, and it grounds anybody who does venture into this influencer, parasocial world.
Yeah. It can help with that. I mean, I've pointed out to Paul, most of what you're doing is just creating little spin-off cults all over the place, because a lot of those people are actually, the number of YouTube channels that have been spawned by Paul's project is ridiculous. You can't track half of them. And instead of those guys,
how are they cults?
Together,
are they just distributed communication groups?
They're not getting together towards a common purpose. They're all starting their own YouTube channels. And like, some of them have talents, for example, so I had a conversation with Mathieu Peugeot, which was excellent, Jonathan's brother, right? And we've been going back and forth on Twitter for a while. He actually is the one who launched my channel to some extent when he found it. And so that was the first big wave for my subscriber count. And then this conversation, 2 years since, I guess, I've got over 7,000 views. It's obviously my biggest video, and I'm so grateful. But look, that was my first big interview, and I did an adequate job on it, but I screwed up the beginning for sure. Like, and I realize that now, and whatever. I mean,
well, hold on before
not my skill.
Get into that, but following the thread of people starting cults because they're doing it alone, there's not common cause. Wouldn't a common cause be what causes a cult to form, rather than more individualistic, just trading of ideas and marketplacing?
But it's not trading of ideas, and they're not good at communicating their ideas. So, like, in the same way that I didn't handle that interview well, right? Some of them, some of them have amazing editing skills, right? And I now have a relatively stable editor who does a really good job, right? But I'm also not going to use the fast cuts and all the ridiculous, right? If those people would get together to a common set of ideas and a common communication method, and maybe a common enough language, that would change what they do and how they do it and how effective they are.
Yeah.
Instead, they're just splitting off and finding followers, which is very internet. I mean, that's the internet is like.
Yeah, that's kind of just what the internet is. These echo chambers that kind of come and go, or tighter or looser.
Elon's trying to fix that, right? Zuckerberg was trying to fix that with Facebook. Like, everyone's trying to fix that problem.
Fix the echo chambering, or the people atomizing?
Well, they're again, if you buy into the thesis that the fall of the fourth estate is real and that we've lost something important, what that is, we could have debates about, but everyone's scrambling to fill that vacuum. And if you start viewing things in terms of vacuums, what did we lose and what's taking its place, the world starts to make a lot more sense. And so you've got all these people trying to fill these vacuums. And so you may think, for example, the most important thing is that we just get people into a church, right? That's Jonathan Peugeot with just go to church. I mean, he sort of backed off on that, right? I think that's ridiculous for lots of reasons.
Because of the church part, or because people going to church?
Well, there's a number of problems. First of all, which church? That's the Vanderklay is very big on. No, it doesn't matter which church. And I'm like, it probably does actually, right?
Okay.
How did we get here? We had too many churches.
Okay.
We don't have any single authorities, right? Also, if you go to church and it doesn't make any sense to you for a variety of reasons, which my team has sort of theories about and videos on, it ain't gonna work, right? And it doesn't. And so my thesis is based around, well, we have all these people, we'll call them churned up by the internet and Peterson, right? And maybe Peterson helped them, because he helped a lot of people. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't really matter. He only goes so far, right? Paul Vanderklay agrees about that. That's something we used to talk about quite a bit. He only goes so far. He doesn't take them, quote, the rest of the way, which, by the way, we can't agree on what that is, but we agree that it needs to happen.
So he's kind of like Moses. He always dies at the verge of the promised land, gets COVID, ends up in Russia. Now it's mold. God rest Peterson's body. I hope he mends, but he always kind of disappears right on the eve of major disasters.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's an interesting pattern for sure. Right. And you can liken it to Moses. There's tons of patterns that are like that.
Can we drill into either of two things?
Sure.
One is the institution of the fourth estate. Do we need it?
Yeah.
Does it fulfill something? Or do you believe in institutions? You said Peterson has authority and he believes in institutions. And what I'm seeing right now is a lot of vying for the legitimacy of the institutions after the institutions imploded under the brunt of hyper-progressive wokeness.
Well, it's an interesting way to think about it. I don't
just to revise, the institutions themselves haven't imploded yet, but their legitimacy imploded.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, that's a good. I knew what you meant, but yeah, I'm glad you clarified there for sure. One thing people don't realize is the legitimacy of anything you look at with sufficient detail goes away instantly, which is a very scary statement. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, no, that's not true. And I'm like,
there's a Michael Crichton phrase about an expert reads a newspaper and he sees everything that's wrong about this story, and then he believes everything outside of his realm of expertise.
The Gell-Mann effect or something. Yeah. No, it's worse. If you so I'm on a crypto call, and the crypto guys are all like, you know what, stablecoin is going to fix the federal national debt. And I'm like, well, first of all, I love all you guys, but we're just people. We're not going to fix the national debt. So that happened. We're little tiny people, right? The federal government's big. It's really big.
Yeah.
Right? The debt is huge. Debt doesn't go away because you change the way money works, or you think you change the way money works. And in fact, you're not doing anything of the kind. And almost nobody, except for one other person who always oddly agrees with me when I talk about Bitcoin not being the one true savior of the world, which is how they talk about it, by the way. Anybody in the Bitcoin circles, right? Because I'm a technologist and I know exactly how that technology works and what dangers there are and what costs you're paying for having a decentralized blockchain system. Like I could write a blockchain from scratch. It actually is trivial code to write. Don't tell anybody, they'll get all upset that it's not super complicated technical stuff. It actually isn't. It's standard cryptography, which is all the way back. Computers were used for two things: firing objects, usually missiles, and
hiding information. Yeah.
Those are the original uses, right? So when you look at Bitcoin from the detail of what is this technology and how does it work and what does it rely on and what are all the dangers, and granted, very few people can do that, and I'm just blessed because I've had more than 2 computers since I was 8 years old. I know a hell of a lot about computers. I'm like, this isn't doing what you think it's doing. So the story that the Bitcoin people will tell you about decentralization is not entirely correct. It's certainly not correct enough to be to solve the problems I want to solve, right? So that dream that you have when you think about crypto and Bitcoin and new economy and other foolish things that are impossible vanishes. And so the credibility of crypto, if you understood crypto, you wouldn't think it was very credible. Not to say you can't make millions of dollars on it, because of course you can, but you can make millions of dollars trading Hummel dolls too. So, or
Mm-hmm.
Beanie Babies, or Magic the Gathering cards, or right on and on and on and on and on. And the question is whether or not trading crypto or Bitcoin or whatever is more stable, more long lasting, more important, better in some
Mm-hmm.
way than trading Magic
Let
the Gathering
alone solving
cards.
the world's problems.
Right. And so, but that's true of everything. So if you take a microscope to the government, you're just going to find out, oh, like, this is the most dysfunctional thing
Yeah,
that could
interdoge.
exist. Like, what's
Yeah.
wrong with these people? But it actually functions well enough where it has to. And the fact that there are errors and they wipe whole people and whole families and whole towns out is
Mm-hmm.
inevitable conclusion of the fact that you can't do without governance.
Okay.
Governance has to exist, and
Can you
so
do
it's going to have
without the
flaws.
fourth estate? And just could you
No,
jog my
you
memory?
can't.
Which is the first, second, and third? It's the priestly caste, the aristocracy, the military, and then the media. Is that the four
I
estates?
I I think so. I
Okay.
think so. So the fourth
Never mind.
estate is actually a British term, it turns out. It's from England. And it's just basically referring to the general broadcast news media.
Okay.
And and it, if you look at the historical timeline in a certain way, which is what I do with my history videos on my channel, you start to realize this is a relatively new phenomena for humans. We used to get all our
Governance?
news at
Oh,
church.
media. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, the church used to provide all of our information, and we get all our
Mm-hmm.
information like directly from the priests. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, that was it. Like you didn't need, and not that they weren't around, right? But
Yeah.
you didn't need that apparatus, because the most important information happens to be, spiritual information, we'll call it, or religious information. And there's was one mediator for that, and it got mediated through this thing called Christendom, which is basically the Catholic Church. And so you imperfectly, which by the way, the fourth estate was imperfect too, so you don't get away from the imperfection just because you change the institution. That information filtered down. And so we at some point lost that. I call this part of the recession of the church. So the church is kind of receding from the world, if you will. Maybe not into mysticism and spirituality,
Hmm.
unfortunately, but maybe it's fading from the world into materialism, would be my argument.
Mm-hmm.
And it stopped doing a bunch of things. And so, like, when you look at it historically, why is the government doing welfare? The government never did welfare before. Well, the
Yeah.
government's doing welfare because the monasteries are gone.
Yeah.
Well, why is the government running orphanages? And we've seen the disaster that's been, overreported though it may have been, or the crimes may have been, especially in Canada. They just made stuff up that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why? Oh, because the monasteries are gone. The monasteries used to do that. Right. The
Mm-hmm.
banking. Oh, the monasteries used to hold the wealth of the community and redistribute it. That's part of the welfare. And
Hmm.
academia, where does that go? Oh, that's from the monasteries. It's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is King Henry VIII destroyed the world? Yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
It took a long time, but
Yeah.
also
I wonder if you could trace
clearly, of
Britain's current troubles to that particular Henry.
course you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what happens is, and this is sort of something new that I came up with the past like 2 months or something. But what I noticed through a little bit of, I forget how I got onto this, through a little bit of research, was Eve, as in Adam and Eve, is Anne Boleyn. And the snake is Tyndale, who writes this reprehensible Reformation style book. And then she introduces it to King Henry VIII. And then 100 years or so later, the King of England is beheaded. And that's where the French Revolution comes from. Oh, we don't need a king. And it's not even, we don't need a king. England did fine without one because that didn't even happen. It's because of the United States. Because people look at the United States and they go, look, they had this revolution and it worked. Well, first of all, this is the most unusual thing called a revolution in history. All the revolutions that we know about in history have three or more factions vying for power from, from some power source, if you want to put it that way, or vying for control of the governance of whatever it is a better way to say it, a cleaner way to say it. That didn't happen in the United States. That didn't happen at all. What happened was everybody united against the king, realizing they needed a king, and came up with a framework that worked to replace the king well enough to last as long as any government, at least since the fall of the Roman Empire, although I argue including, has lasted, right? It's 250 years basically, and doing pretty damn good.
That's a pretty short time historically. I mean, it's no Egyptian dynasty or China's dynasties.
Right, but in terms of types of governance, right? Like stable forms of government.
Outside of a monarchical / bureaucratic.
Well, can you compare a monarchy to a governance that happened, we'll say, post England? Because the thing is, you behead the English king, what happens? You replace the monarchy with a parliament, right? And that parliament is actually run largely by a corporation, the largest corporation that has ever existed in history, larger than the top 5 corporations today in terms of any kind of measure you want to make. The East India Company is enormous. It's an absolutely enormous beast.
Why
and
you
it's the
use
India
the
Company that causes the revolution.
Not was, but is. Were we talking from the perspective of that time then? Or are you arguing? I'm just sussing it out. Are you arguing that the East India Company still exists?
No, it doesn't still exist, but the amount of control and, we'll say, economic resources it had, and it took over the parliament.
It took over the world.
It ran significant parts of the world and set the stage for what we're calling colonialism is actually just merciless business capitalists at some level, and you can always make the argument that they're much maligned for things they did not do or things that are misunderstood, and that is also true. They were not as big a villain as people think, but also it was the East India Company that caused the Stamp Act, that caused the revolution in this country, like 100%. There's no
really?
Right. There's no, and that's because they ran the parliament, and the argument against the king is really just propaganda at some level. It's not an invalid argument. It's a perfectly correct argument, because the king is responsible for the colonies, period. Not the parliament was never responsible for the colonies. That's why they passed a law that we didn't have representation for, that we got upset about. Right? So you see how this works? Like in a monarchy, there wouldn't have been a question of representation. The king represents us, and what he says goes. But
yes. Okay. Revolution
never happens. The king is weak. His power's been taken away. It's basically not the right house anymore. It's the Hanoverian usurpers.
So once Henry undermines the authority of the church, he eventually, as a matter of course, undermines the authority of the monarch.
The monarchs all get crowned by the church, man. It's not that hard.
Can we
right?
Can we go back to that? I mean, or is it just like the fall of the Fourth Estate? There's nowhere else to go except forward. This eternal dissolution of authority.
Yeah, this is a weird thing. Like, I don't understand why Vicky does this all the time. Well, we can't go back. And I'm like, have you read a history book? Because now I got questions. Because we go back all the time. Like Jared Diamond, who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, also wrote a book called Collapse. It was basically outlining how cultures go back all the time. I think you get 2 options.
Right? Back in that direction, yeah.
Well, no, it's the same direction. You have 2 options. You can go back by not going back deliberately and causing a collapse.
Okay.
Because you're scared to cut things out. Because you're going to get it wrong. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Or you can carefully cut things out and go back voluntarily. And both have been done. You can see this historically. Both have been done to greater or lesser degrees of success, and some collapses aren't all that bad, right? But most of them are catastrophic. And yeah, if your attitude is progress, we have to go forward. Once we change, we can never unchange, or we can never change back. Then collapse is your only option. Also, I don't want that. and that's not our only option.
You don't. Okay.
Just have open the discussion for.
Yeah. To what though? The boomers, God bless their souls, and I'm going to miss them when they're gone if I don't go first. Because I think that they're responsible for the state we're in both directions, both good and bad. They've modernized the world, and their participation in is both good and bad. But anyways, they have this rebellious streak. They hate authority. They held this no kings protest. Like, where's the king? What are they talking about? Yeah. But the idea of authority, central authority, kingship, monarchy is so alien. It's more alien than the notion of piety or going to church, more alien than God, like in a certain respect, to the liberal imagination, and liberal in the broadest sense. Yeah. So how do we teach, how do we purvey the reality of what a proper authority, in the case of a monarch or any other system, should be? We can talk about it with regard to the Fourth Estate. How do we know the New York Times is the authority? Well, they just are, and they've done a bang-up job expending their authority in record time, but they still have that authority. So we know, and the boomers who are protesting no kings are relying on their no kings protest from, there's a narrative, there's an authority that's telling them that their freedom is under threat of some sort. But the whole discussion about what is authority, what is a proper authority, what's a good authority, is kind of missed, because all this mumbo jumbo about representation and democracy, and if you break down any of those terms, they really fall apart really quickly. The people who are most stringently fighting for democracy want to take it away as much as possible for those who don't go along with their particular version of democracy. So I'm just wondering, do you have any clues as to how, or if we can fit it into the cascade effect that Peterson has had with all these conversations that are going on up to and including the Arvanite Dark Enlightenment, the new right ideas, Machiavellianism, elite theorists, stuff like that.
Yeah, this all works very easily. Good. So you have to work backwards, and I happen to be highly dyslexic, so I'm really good at looking backwards.
Oh, there we go. You can't help it.
Yeah, I just see things in both directions all the time. What would have to be true for people en masse will say, we can constrain it to a generation, even though I don't particularly care for that framing, because it has its own unique set of problems.
Yeah, but it's easy. Whatever terms, we'll use them lightly.
Just the generation. I can just fit the example to the frame. I don't. Okay. I'm not constrained like other people to their frames. I can work in your frame. That's easy.
You're a Gen Xer for sure.
It's a universal pattern, and I specialize in patterns somehow. I didn't know that until recently. Now I know what I'm specializing in: relevance realization and patterns. That's what I do. So, what would have to be true of the boomers for them to have the attitude that they have about kings? Let's say, what value are they embodying in that instance?
There's got to be a positive value, but my knee-jerk reaction would be anti-authoritarianism of some sort. But there's probably
the positive statement of anti-authoritarianism is freedom.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they're I don't want to say it's their highest value, because I have a different theory about that. But in that instance, for that frame, their highest value is freedom, specifically individual freedom. And if you
liberty.
Listen to
this is the James Lindsay frame. You don't have to go too far down that, but that's what he promulgates. That's his North Star. That's his sacred, what he's trying to preserve. That, and for some reason, Israel. But that's another thing we'll have to get into. But anyways, he embodies this kind of what you're talking about the boomerite, no kings, no authority.
Right. And if that were a problem, which it actually isn't, but then that would be great. But this is bad problem formulation. So they have this problem. when you hear them describe freedom, what are they describing? They're describing freedom from constraint and consequence. Does this sound like the 60s at all? Because
they don't want to say the consequence part, but if you look at their spending patterns and the successive financial crises, it is.
Don't worry about what they say. Listen to their description. See, this is what bothers me about people. People are very. It's weird, right? Because it's the same people. They're very big on this is what somebody said, but then, for example, this happens to me all the time. I'll say, what is it that you think I said? And they will use 0%, including the prepositions of the words that I used. And I'm like, but I didn't actually use any of those words.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, they're like, well, you got to listen to what people say. And on the other hand, they're not capable of doing that. But if you actually listen to their description of what they're talking about, it's freedom from constraint and freedom from consequence. Okay, fair enough. Like, I get that. And that, we'll say, is their sort of unique fault for that generation, just to give James Lindsay's little cult its due.
Yeah.
That
amateur porn is freedom. That's the meme that people use to cudgel him about. Amateur porn is freedom encapsulates. Yeah. Right. But then you get to like the millennials or whatever, and they're like, no, I want the Latin mass. I want orthodoxy. I want to go to an orthodox. Really? I want constraint.
So they don't believe in that. And they see the problem with it. They're like, no, they did this. We don't like it. We're going to go the other direction. Fair enough. It's sort of stuck in binary thinking. It's not great, but it's better. It's better than staying in that, especially when you're young. And because they weren't in that when they were young. That's what they were fighting for. And everybody misses the time component in these things. They kind of flatten everything out. Like, well, they were always rebels, and they were no. They were parasites on the structure that they had. And it was that structure that they took advantage of to create all the problems that you can argue that they definitely created. Maybe they didn't create all the problems, people think they did. But that is embedded in a larger problem. And that problem only becomes, we'll say, obvious with the internet. And that problem is what I call the age of gnosis. So the age of gnosis is my replacement term for what people are calling modernity. I think that's a bad word. I have a whole video on why that can't be a useful word to use to describe anything.
Do you mean gnosis? Could you define the word gnosis? Is gnosis as in the Gnostic tradition, or gnosis as in a component of human understanding? Okay.
Knowledge as propositions.
Okay.
Right. So not even what I would call knowledge, which is just your experience, right?
This explains the faction of the Lindsayeites who are the classical conservative constitutionalists. And when you listen to what they're talking about, it's just a bunch of propositions all the way down. It's all propositions. There's no such thing as a country other than these propositions that kind of cling there that we believe in, but they don't believe in idols because they suppose these things into existence. Everybody else is hoodwinked believers, but they have arrived at this gnosis, this articulation of fact that is rather removed from how human beings work, how power works, all these other things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So you've noticed. It's like some people notice, most people don't. Like most people.
The Lindsayeites have two factions. It's the gnosis people and then the bitches, like the fangirls who are just very emotional about panicking all the time.
They want, and people like that generally on both sides. When they reach the end of that system, if you will, or that way of thinking about the world, right?
There'd
that framing, that worldview, they just switch worldviews, right? So they might have been Curtis Yarvin fans yesterday, right? And then they're James Lindsay fans today, and then tomorrow they'll be somebody else, right?
Because what's the psychological component of that migration?
Well, it's psychological comfort, right? Like when John Vervaeke talks about domicide, on the one hand, he's absolutely right. On the other hand, I don't think he takes his own ideas seriously enough. People don't feel like they belong. Why? Because they don't know what they're doing or what they should be doing or how to do it. They don't know any of that. And they're relying on, I don't have that problem, by the way, but they're relying on propositions. But the thing is, propositions are swappable. Like I said, it could be Curtis Yarvin one day and James Lindsay the other. There's nothing
or COVID vaccine one day and Ukraine war the next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're getting a comfort from it. And you may say, listen, paying attention to Ukraine war or Gaza or Africa, anything happening on the continent of Africa is just stress-inducing anxiety. But you have a place. You know what you're and you're inserting yourself into that where you want. There's that freedom, right? And so that underlying freedom thing
the
causes us.
Bio,
yeah. And then why do we have that? Because we're all individualists. Well, where did that come from? Well, that's actually just sola scriptura, sola this, sola this, five solas. I don't like what? Yeah, the more I learn about Protestantism, the more I'm like, really? Anybody fell for this at all? This is insane. It's obviously wrong, right? And so, you start to see this pattern unfold from, oh, really? We beheaded the king. We destroyed the hierarchy. And that caused a second destruction of a second hierarchy effectively, although it blends into each other, right? Because the real Reformation doesn't start until long after, right? Until long after King Henry VIII starts it, right? Luther comes along later, right? And the Enlightenment is in that. And then you'll notice everyone blames the Enlightenment. Well, guess what? It ain't the Enlightenment.
Well, can you trace it back to Christ? He initiated a lot of this stuff. Or Paul?
No, render unto Caesar. I mean, it's pretty clear.
Okay.
I don't know.
There were demands of authority, the two swords of Christ.
Well, you can one thing that I've played with idea-wise is you can argue that render unto Caesar creates, we'll say, the idea of capitalism, which is just the free use of capital, right? The free and equal use of capital. Over time, obviously, over a few hundred years, maybe 1,000 or 1,500. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not that into economics, we'll say.
Yeah, but the capitalism does form the backbone of the Protestant, the West. Capitalism is essential to, when we're talking about freedom, there's an economic component of this liberty. Freedom to have discretionary income, to make investments, and then to offload the consequences onto society.
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. That is a side effect, that last part, for sure. Well, look, I think the best way to think about capitalism is it's a measure of economic freedom. In other words, before capitalism, let's suppose there are lands somehow that are outside of a kingdom, and you go to those lands and you acquire gold, and then you come back to your kingdom. That gold isn't worth anything at all, because no one will trade you for it, because everybody knows it's the king's gold, period. And whether or not when you bring that gold back, you give it to the king, he gives you something in exchange, is irrelevant. There's zero capitalism because it's the king's gold. Whether it's found on the king's land or not, it's owned by the king's subject. It's the king's gold. And that is more or less, I know I'm somewhat overgeneralizing, you kind of have to when you're talking about large groups and history, right? Like, more or less, nobody will give you anything for that gold because they know it's not your gold. Only the king can transact the gold or the jewels or whatever, right? And yes, there's a black market, and sure, everywhere. Always true, right? Not interested in exceptions. You can't. But
what you're describing right now as capitalism, or the economic component, is the same thing we're talking about when we're talking about sola scriptura or liberty over freedom from constraint, freedom from consequences. It's all part of the same thing. I mean, the beauty of the Reformation and the West's flight from authority is the massive amount of innovation and self-direction, and then that whole concept of the free market, letting people generate massive amounts of wealth beyond what a king, even with a great court of advisors, could accomplish. So there is positives to this, and it's bound up into...
No, there's no positives to it.
No.
This is that attitude.
So you're even arguing that an economic monarchy.
Well, it's not economic monarchy. So what you're describing is, first of all, not Western at all. It's American. It's not North American. It's the freaking United States is what you described. Right? So there is a hierarchy of capital in England. Like, I think probably even to this day, although much less so, right? So what you're describing is this equality doctrine, I call it, which is very Protestant, this idea of equality, right? I don't need the authority of the Pope because I'm the King of England and I can just start a new church. What? Like that's not, you're not equal at that point. You're claiming you're equal to Jesus. He's the guy that started the church, right? So what's happening, right? And people don't think of it that way, but that's the way you need to think about it. And then once you start thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute. So then what happened is even just the Industrial Revolution, which I'm somewhat of an expert on, having grown up in Lowell, the home of the second Industrial Revolution, if you will, right? So what happens in Lowell, right? They send this guy named Lowell, has an eidetic memory. Interesting, right? Over to England to go look at the wonders of their water run mills, right? And he's not allowed to take any notes, which is no problem for him because he has eidetic memory. So he goes back to his hotel room, writes it all out on napkins, sails back. They take every single component and improve on it, every single one. Why? Well, over here, guess what? That machinist guy that everybody knows from that village or town or whatever the heck it was, I forget his name. The wealthy people know about him because it's a very flat world. There's not a lot of people living here still, right? It's a big land and not a lot of people, right? It's okay. Well, we're going to use his unique skills as a blacksmith, basically, and a machinist to improve upon all these designs that the British took, probably 100 generations to come up with.
Yeah.
And we're just going to improve them all, which wouldn't be possible in England because that guy would never meet somebody high enough up the hierarchy to do this with. And then bang, you have this. The stuff that happened in the United States is ridiculous, which is why everyone's following us, right? They're following our example. But they're grafting this equality doctrine run, for better or for worse, I'm going to probably argue for worse, United States methods onto a hierarchical system. So when you talk about Western values, there are no Western values. The things people are describing are uniquely American values, like free speech. No one in Europe ever had free speech. That still hasn't happened. They don't have any free. What are you talking about? The difference between like a European, say, constitution or whatever, we'll call it governance guideline document, and the one in the US, there's a lot of big differences, right? First, we have a two-tiered system, a federal system, and then individual states, which are more akin to European countries. But the big difference is if you read any of these European documents, you can go back as far as you want, or you can read something from today, they grant people rights. The US Constitution doesn't grant anybody rights. It asserts them as a starting point and then constrains the government. It's completely backwards from what Europe does. Completely. Like there's no overlap. It is totally different.
Well, there's overlap insofar as it's the reverse.
It's not exactly the reverse because you can't exactly reverse it. That's part of the problem. It's just a different starting point. You could start at a different point. You could, because, and this thing, I just listened to Richard Rowland, Universal History. So the practical implementation at the state level for this was actually, no. If you didn't go to church and the way, or not go to church, if you weren't in the church and the way you were in the church was by giving a convincing story about how you had met Jesus on the road to Damascus, roughly speaking, see the latest Universal History episode on this. Richard Rowland does a much better and more complete job of that than I could ever do. Then you're not in the church. And if you're not in the church, you can't vote, by the way. Like, so the church is really controlling, even in the Protestant world, the church is completely controlling every aspect of your life. We have since lost that, and look, everything's a mess and on fire. I wonder if there's a correlation there. Right? So we've lost that in the United States, but Europe's just been copying us on that. Of course, that's one of my history videos, Frontier of Ideas. Europe's just been copying what they see in the United States. The French Revolution is a good example of that. Of course, they do a terrible job because they don't understand what happened.
Well, they're different people.
But they also don't understand I don't think anybody understands how the revolution in the United States went so well. I like maybe I sort of kind of understand it, maybe, but like I don't think anybody's really paid attention to that. And Jonathan Peugeot says all the time, it's a really weird thing what the United States did and how it got its freedom. Yeah, it is. It's a really weird thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a useful fiction, right? It's a useful false
Myth.
narrative
Yeah.
because,
Ethnogenesis. Yeah.
well, ultimately the United States wasn't fighting England. Like, are you high? England's huge. There's no way they're the best navy in the world. Like, what are you talking about? You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's really part of this larger war between France and England, right? And France is doing what? Well, they're using the Native Americans. Oh, wait a minute. They're doing what? They're using the Native Americans to attack the English colonies. But then they kind of switch sides. Now they're on the sides of the colonies. Why? Because they think right up until like 50 years later, both sides are convinced the experiment, because this is an experiment that we're in, by the way. We live in an experiment. It's explicit, right? It's going to fail. And then England's going to come back or France is going to come in. They're writing about this decades after the event, as though this is an unfinished project that nobody knows which way it's going to land, but it's not going to continue that way. And then it does. Like,
Yeah.
What? What's
Why?
happening?
God, history, the people. Is it
Well,
like an ethnic?
I think it's a unique situation where, again, on paper, it looks like we just have this magical government that doesn't convey from anywhere. But if you look deeply enough in the founding documents, you realize, oh, this experiment, they say this experiment doesn't work without a common idea of God. That might be important. Like, okay, I believe you. Now, we don't need the church to crown a king, so we can be a Protestant nation with 1,000 different splinter religions that pretend to have something to do with the Gospels or something, which I disagree with.
Yeah.
Well,
It's an experiment filled with massive amounts of experiments. All these different churches, all these different economic.
Yeah, it's designed
contracts
as a distributed system with, right? Because again, we don't have one government system in the United States. We have one big one for the federal system, which is a completely unique system that never existed before, as near as I can tell, and probably will never exist again because we're in a lot of trouble, guys. Right? And then we have all these states that are independent experiments bounded by this constitutional document, right? The founding papers, right? And they're independent, sorts of governments. Like, it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Not all the states are commonwealths, by the way, right? So, they have individual government experimentations. That's why you're not supposed to federalize everything, because then you're ruining the lab that is the set of experiments. That might be a hint, by the way, as to how to go back. This isn't that hard. Get rid of the Department of Education. Good start, right? Because that ruined a bunch of things, right? Because when you don't have a Department of Education, you don't have, we'll say, the same educational problems throughout most of the country, right? One or two states, like maybe California, tries to be woke, and the rest of the states are fine. And who cares, right? Not that big a deal. You lose that when you federalize everything. So we don't want that.
Isn't it in the nature of the system to just gravitate back towards monarchy or back towards centralization? So if you just admit that as the tendency of the system, then you can start to talk about how authority should be handled.
Well, I think there's a fundamental problem here that the founding fathers are geniuses, and like everyone should just read them because they're much smarter than anybody around today. Sorry. They're much smarter. They have a much closer understanding of how things work. The reason why we have a president is because they understood full well that the issue is there are conditions where full, total, unfair, ridiculous, tyrannical monarchy is absolutely required. Those conditions, by the way, are called war. There might be other conditions, which is why there's emergency powers. Fair enough, right? But you're not getting around that requirement of the world, because you can say, well, the amount of government we need is exactly X. You've eliminated time and change, which are the same thing. Right? You've eliminated time from the equation. sometimes the government is going to have to be more tyrannical. Sometimes the government is okay to be less tyrannical. So you can just, like, that's going to happen because the world is not this smooth, stable, never changing, thing that just works within these small boundaries. The world's kind of all over the place. like when there's like a disaster, someone needs to come in and just say, I'm in charge temporarily of everything. And I'm just going to fix this for the most people. And when you fix something for a large number of people, individuals and families are going to get wiped out for sure. But A, they might have gotten wiped out anyway. And B, it's better to pick the ones you wipe out than wipe out an unknown random number for no good cause. And it's this inability of us as we'll call them recent humans to think about hierarchy and momentum and time correctly and realize solving a problem for you or you and I, between you and I, this is the trick of socialism. I have a video on that, right? Has no overlap with solving a problem for 1,000 people. None. Those things are not going to, they will follow exactly the same self-similar fractal pattern for sure. But you probably don't understand self-similar fractal patterns well enough to know that the way that you would solve it looks completely different. In other words, the pattern's the same, but the implementation is different. And because when you act at the level of 1,000 people or 100,000 people or 1,000,000 people, and maybe it changes at each one of those scales too, I don't know, but it's worth thinking about, right? The impacts to individuals are inevitable and different. And so if you zoom back in to the individual and say, well, this individual got wiped out by that system, and therefore that system is bad, you can't have any system. But then you also can't address and solve problems for thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people. So it's a trade-off. It's like, do you, oh, and by the way, if you fix it for that person, right, if they don't get wiped out, what if everybody else does? Because that's a scenario that has happened. This isn't theoretical. Right. And because I'm in computers and I've dealt with things at various points of scale, in fact, having to scale computer systems in particular, right? I've seen all this. Like, I've experienced all of it. Like, I've tried to build things and, I've had all those problems, right? Like, why is the cloud bad? Because when the cloud goes out, you lose all the companies, right? Which is what happened recently. A couple times now, right? Oh, this cloud service went down. Well, yeah, because things have to be centralized at some level or we can't find them and we can't trade. And then, all these other companies got impacted. Well, yeah, of course, right? And then the question, it's a valid question. Does that mean we are pro cloud or against cloud? I don't know. Like, go either way on that, right? You gotta look at what you're trading off.
The question of what is an American or the American identity. You gave a hint about buried in those documents was this call to believe in a God, the same God.
Yeah.
Can you describe that direction? God is a direction, or that unifying principle? And is it something that can be rebootstrapped back into collective consciousness? And maybe that's even what Peterson embarked on, wittingly or on.
It's interesting. I don't think in terms of direction. Our word is, because direction is flat, actually. Our word's orientation.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if you have a group of, and I'm not accusing you of this, but it's easy to be flip about these little word changes, but they're not little. They're actually a big deal. Even the people who go, we need to fix the language, will get very upset with me when I say, no, I don't talk about direction. I talk about orientation. They get very upset. I'm like, but you believe the language is broken. I'm fixing it. Like, for real. Like, this isn't that hard.
Orientation, we don't have to get too into that, but just describe orientation.
Right. If you're all looking up at the same point above you and you're trying to reach that point, the way you do that is going to be different. Your path is going to be different, but you're going to end up in the same place if you're all oriented towards the same thing above you. It's the above that really matters too, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? Because somebody who's directly below the object they're aiming for has a straight, short path, and somebody who's out here doesn't. And it's actually super important, because when people think about, and this is the core problem right here, when people think about these things, they compress them down, they make them into a piece of paper, basically. They talk about direction, and they say we just need to move, in direction. And then when they upgrade, they say, well, it's a path. So maybe the direction isn't a straight direction. It's like, no, all of these ways of thinking about it are actually missing an entire dimension. And therefore, right. So Peterson talks about multivariate equations. Yeah. Like you're getting closer. You're not there, but you're getting closer. Right.
The concept of liberty or freedom, when it's placed into that that framework of you are free, actually you're not even free, but it's upon you. You're responsible for figuring out that direction yourself. Right. The orientation, however, you're not necessarily free to choose.
Yeah, again, it depends on your definition of freedom. So people are very confused about how the language works because we've made everybody literate, but they don't have good comprehension.
Was that the problem?
That is a problem. It's a huge problem.
Thanks, Gutenberg. Bastard.
It's not even Gutenberg's fault, but yeah, I mean, literacy was originally for words and numbers and basically knowing how to at least understand basic contracts and sign your name. Basically, that's it. That's all literacy is good for, and that's all literacy should be good for. And we've traded literacy for comprehension. And so you have people with very large vocabularies who don't know how to use any words at all. And then they make up terms like social justice, which is an impossible verbal combination. There's no such thing as a society without justice, and justice doesn't make a sense outside of society. Therefore, saying social justice means that you're a little on the slow side when it comes to speaking. Sorry.
But you're on the fast side for destroying the country.
Yeah, because you're taking two concepts that are dependent upon one another and therefore need to be framed in something higher. Hint, hint. Yes. Right. And you're trying to talk about them as though they're an atomic individual object that are not only combined, but are apart from everything else. And this matters because it's the apart from everything else that's the problem. So when you think about freedom, and Ben Shapiro tried to do yeoman's work on this, free from or free to, right? And so, and what that points to, which is far more important, is what is the frame of freedom? Because you have to define that before you use the word. Otherwise, the word doesn't convey meaning. It doesn't convey anything. Because if I just say, well, I'm free, I didn't tell you anything. You don't know anything more than you did before. I just said I was free. I go, okay, I don't, okay, I believe you. Also, how's the weather? Like, where am I going to go with that?
Yeah, the land
of the free. It doesn't make any sense to talk about this. Yeah. So what did we lose? Everybody until like yesterday actually understood the under God part. And like they had the symbolic understanding, if you want to frame it that way, already. And we have lost all of that. So that's where my channel, my Navigating Patterns project comes from. Like, we lost all that. What the heck's that all about? Like, where did that come from? Why is it that anybody would have to explain to you that telling somebody that you're free means you didn't say anything at all? That no information was passed whatsoever. Why isn't this obvious? Because people are doing this all the time. And other people going, oh, that person's really smart. I should follow them. Why should you follow somebody who's smart? It's the age of gnosis. Knowledge as the highest value. That person said something that I maybe understood or maybe didn't understand, but I think I understood it well enough to know that it's valuable. What? They didn't even say anything at all. They didn't convey information to you. And you're already listening to anything else they have to say.
Could you give a little bit more concrete example? We could bring up personalities, influencers, just so I can understand the way that this works in real time.
Well, sure. I mean, you could look at a guy like Eric Weinstein, who, Eric did a lot of damage online, and I happened to see the aftermath of that. So I was never a fan.
Damage?
Right? And he will say stuff like, well, we have to get off this planet because everything's a mess. And it's like, why is that your starting
That's what he
statement?
said is, it was a weird leap at the ARC thing. He's like, so we have to go interplanetary. It's like, aren't you going to just bring your problems with you?
and where does that come from? He's copying Elon Musk. It's not even his idea. I don't think he knows that he's copying Elon Musk, to be a little bit fair to him, even though don't feel particularly charitable towards him ever. But I don't think he knows that.
Well, why does he get your goal? Just to get a little bit, to understand you better would probably be, understanding of you would be evoked by understanding why you have a contention with Weinstein. Eric, not Brett.
Yeah. Well,
assumably.
Well, I have contentions with Brett too.
You have contentions with everyone. I've gathered that much so far.
Not really contentions with Peterson. He's pretty good. No, I mean, when I was online, what basically happened was, I got into the Peterson pipeline, right? I really liked what he was saying. I saw something happening. I'm like, oh, this is something's going to happen here for sure. And then I hooked onto the Vervaeke thing, and I watched, unbeknownst to me, he was going to release Awakening to from the Meaning Crisis 1 week at a time for 52 weeks or whatever it ended up being. Yeah. And I didn't realize that at the time, or I would not have done it, by the way. I feel tricked. I feel tricked, John. You tricked me.
You wouldn't have started the videos if you'd known it'd take you a year to finish them? Is that what you're saying?
No, I would have done them at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody does online. We binge.
Yeah.
That was the era of binge. And I'm not even a fan of binging necessarily. I was when I was younger, when you couldn't do it because everything was on VHS tapes and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was sort of like, yeah, this is not great. And I had binged, all kinds of online courses and all that stuff. So like, I have no problem binging. And so I watched this thing and I'm like, wow, this is great. And, my mother's dying of cancer, right? All this nonsense is going on. There's lawsuits. I'm involved in 2 lawsuits in the past 15 years. It's been terrible. And so all this stuff is going on. And I'm like, well, what can I do to give back to this guy? He clearly put a lot of effort into this. This is fantastic. I can like the videos. I can do all that. And then he announces this meditation series. And I'm like, oh, now we're talking. And I'm like, look, I know a lot about meditation. I talked to Paul about this. I know a lot about meditation. You ain't teaching anything about meditation. I'm pretty up. Oh, no. His system was much better than mine. I was like, man, this is better than my system. What happened? But the reason why I was watching it was to pay him back for that wonderful series that he did, because I got a lot out of it. I have my hints that I don't know that I agree with this, and I'm not sure he's right about that and stuff like that. But it's a hell of a lot of work for those guys. And so I was going on his meditation live streams, and I was making sure that I was there every day. And because I grew up online, unbeknownst to me, and this is the thing that sort of clued me in, I just build online communities. Like, I understand that sort of inherently. It's very hard to describe to people how communities work, but like, I know it because I've been involved, particularly in online communities, right? I've built a bunch of them, some by accident, that one kind of by accident, right? So with the YouTube thing going on, and I was in the YouTube live comments greeting everybody, and we built this little thing, and somebody came on and said, hey, join my Discord server. And I was like, whatever, okay, we'll do the Discord server. And so we built this little Discord server called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, right? That was tangentially attached to John, and then we partnered up with John and all that. But that was kind of my way of giving back. But then what happened is Eric Weinstein had also set up a Discord server, and he was working on his crazy project, his crazy physics project. And a few of those people were
He's trying to solve the world, I think, from what I gather.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to rewrite physics and therefore solve the world, which is a common mistake among science idiots, because they somehow think science is supposed to encompass the world, and it wasn't ever going to do that, and certainly can't. But they keep trying, so good for them, I guess.
But it overlaps. His physics, his economics overlaps with the meaning component, the search for meaning.
Well, I think if you believe in, the Kurzweilian singularity, where, if we just solve a physics problem, the world will collapse and we'll have utopia, which is basically what they're saying. I know they use more words, but actually that's all they're really saying. If you listen closely, you'll hear it.
Yeah, infinite free energy. Then we can escape the
right.
planet.
You solve physics, you solve free energy, you solve economics. It's all the same. I mean, look at all the people that used economics to make, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, hedge funds, right? Most of that's a lie, by the way, but it did happen for a couple. So fair enough, right? So obviously math will fix the world, and he's a mathematician and he can fix the world. Like Jesus Christ confirmed. That's the pattern right there, right? And so But what he does is he builds.
I know another famous mathist whose hubris is extended beyond his grasp.
Well,
Anyways,
and it's not even them. It's almost everybody you meet. Like
I think
everybody online.
I think it's a part of the Western Luciferian Faustian spirit. I think it's just part of
it's the individualism. Like there's no hierarchy, so someone's got to step up and save the world. Fair enough. I don't disagree. It's just, but there is a hierarchy and we're lying about it and we don't see it anymore and we don't have a healthy relationship with it, right? So Eric goes and basically he's just mean to the people at his Discord server, and a bunch of them end up at the Meaning Crisis server. It's like, oh no, this math guy, gets drunk and he does these things and he's very mean to people and he doesn't take any criticism and he doesn't seem serious about the project. And so a bunch of those broken people end up in the Peterson sphere, if you will, or at least the Vervaeke end of it, right? And so they came to our server. We're like, oh yeah, well, we've got answers to a bunch of these sorts of questions that Eric isn't even asking, right? That maybe John Vervaeke is, right? And so some of them were great contributors. Some of them are still there, right? A lot of them were bouncing around. Some of them, were with some of the other online personalities, like we talked about earlier, right? Like you buy one online personality, when he fails you or she fails you, you get a different one, right? And you look for answers elsewhere, right? And you try to maybe then you get the idea that you can put those answers together, and then Paul Vanderklay encourages you, so you start your own channel, and now you're a cultist too. Fantastic, thanks. That's what we need, is more 12-person cults. That's wonderful. And so this is the splitting. This is constant splitting that Protestantism and Protestant attitudes are inevitably going to have a problem with. Right? It's not avoidable, right? And so Eric just traumatized a bunch of people that I really, kind of care about, actually, because I've had relationships with them for like 5 years now. Some of them. Yeah. So that's my beef with him, and it's obvious. Like, he did a bunch of things. Like there's a very good friend of mine. I don't really talk too much anymore, but I met him on Discord, and he was just on Clubhouse. That was a thing for a while, right? That was the great
for
thing.
a hot minute.
And like Eric just blocked him, and I'm like, why did Eric block you? And he says, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't do anything. I've never been against him or anything, even though, because he was like, well, I don't know any physics. Maybe these guys who are criticizing Eric are wrong and Eric's actually right. And, he's not going to take a position. And, like things like that happen because when you're dealing with large groups of people, innocent people are going to get caught in the crossfire for sure. Yeah. And he was one of them. And there were a bunch of other people, right? And people sending Eric art, because the artists are trying to save the world with art, right? Oh, beauty's going to save the world. We give the right statue to the right person, and they'll become a good politician. And I don't understand their chain of thinking, but that's how that's what they do. Some people state this rather explicitly, by the way. So it isn't an uncommon set of beliefs among, we'll say, the higher functioning people on the internet. Like they actually think like, oh, and Vanderklay's talked about this. Like, if you could just get this book to Peterson, it would fix his thinking, and then he'd go to church. It's like, Peterson going to church doesn't solve the problem you think it solves. Like, even if that were to happen, I don't think it's going to have the effect that you think it's going to have at all. So, I get that that's the way you think the world works, and fair enough. That may be as much of the world as you can understand. That's okay, right? But that's not the whole world. Yeah. So that's not how the world works. So, and again, the more you look into this stuff, the more you realize, which is why things like forbidden knowledge, which Plato brings up in the Republic, why no one mentions this, I do not understand. Forbidden knowledge and the management of forbidden knowledge is key to the polis. It's actually super important to have that. And everybody wants to know everything in the age of gnosis. Because it's valuable, and it's not valuable. Like, let's suppose that you could draw a certain type of pentagram on my whiteboard back here and summon a demon. Because from things I have heard about and directly experienced, that's not off the table. Do you want everybody? Do you want your worst enemy knowing that? No.
Well, we can go a little bit more concrete because it sounds like you're talking about Epstein files. Like that's hidden knowledge. That's knowledge that they want to release, but they can't because it has to stay hidden. There's something about it that has to stay hidden. Whether
so what
it's
do you think is going to happen if they release it?
Or even UFOs, but there has to be.
No, yeah, UFOs is all psyop. What happens if they release the Epstein files? See, this is one of those little things that because you don't understand the government, and I don't just mean you personally, because you don't understand the government and law well enough, you think something drastically different from what is possible is going to happen. So what do you think is going to happen if they release those files? Or in an ideal world, if you could get everything you want, what would you want to happen when they release those files?
Well, if we're just say, I'm playing that game. I don't know if this is my answer or not, because I don't really have a definitive answer, but I could hear somebody arguing that we could then hold people accountable.
Under the law?
I guess so. I mean, they're above the law, but that's the thing. Sent superior
they didn't break
jury.
any. No.
For the gods, there is a different law.
They're not above the law.
There is.
They're smarter than you, which is why they're wealthy. Because whether they're personally smarter than you or not, they have better lawyers. Right? They didn't break any laws. Everybody thinks they broke laws. They actually did not break any federal laws. That's the problem. And people don't know that. And then because we don't actually know what happened, even though we may know what happened with some of them, we may not know what happened with all of them. If you release all the names of everybody Epstein ever talked to, for all I know, I could have talked to the guy once. I don't know. I was hanging out at MIT. He was hanging out at MIT. Maybe he said hi to me once and it's on film. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Does that mean I went to his island? No. Can I prove that I didn't go to his island? No. I would get caught in the crossfire.
But why is the Epstein files important to so many people? And why does it have to stay hidden?
Well, because they think that brings down the elite class that's holding them back. The elite class is not holding you back. You know what's holding you back? You suck. That's what's holding you back. You know how you fix that? You be better. That's it. That's it. That's the extent of your world. You make yourself as better as you can be, and maybe it will end tragically, as it does so often for so many other people. But also, bringing down the elite is going to make everything worse for you and everybody around you, period. It is not materialists seem to think like, oh, well, once we Andrew Wilson was just talking about this on his response video. Once we get rid of this influencer, I will come in no, you won't. Okay. Because if you were as good as him, you could do what he was doing. You're not doing what he's doing because you're not as good as him. So you can't replace him. It's really that simple.
That is a very good articulation of something that's just been kind of grinding my gears. The overreaction from the left me, politically homeless, classical liberals to Nick Fuentes, to Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, to Tucker Carlson and Daryl Cooper. It's like, it's not, they want to play the weird switcheroo. Like you can platform whoever you want, but you shouldn't, or you should ask harder questions. Right. It's all, they have to. It's like, no, you want attention, and these people are better at attracting attention, maintaining attention, and then modulating attention. They're masters of this. And if you were better than them, you wouldn't worry about what Tucker Carlson talks to. Right. You wouldn't worry about Nick Fuentes or his ideas. You would attack the ideas directly themselves.
That's right.
And do something better than them.
That's right. Exactly. It's a competitive market. And if you're losing in a competitive market, it's because you're not a competitor and you should get in a different market. And you shouldn't worry about the market you're bad at. Sorry, it just shouldn't. You should do what you're good at. You shouldn't do what you're bad at.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was never under any illusions that I was a good interviewer and that my interview with Mathieu Peugeot is going to go.
You should do another one. It sounds like you need to resolve this karmic debt you've acquired.
Yeah, maybe. Well, and you get better at things. I mean, when I was young, I don't like talking on the phone. Like if I had to call you on the phone right now, it would just cause me a lot of anxiety still. But what did I do with that when I was young? I said, you know what? I need to get a job on a help desk, taking calls all day. That's what I did. And I became rather good at it. Thank you very much. Because I'm just generally competent at lots of things for whatever reason. Thank God that I'm blessed in that way. And so I got really good at it. Because I went after that. I said, people tend to focus on what they're good at, and you should focus on what you're good at to the extent that that's where you should be. But the thing you should put all your time, energy, and attention on are the things you're bad at, either avoiding them because you can't get better or getting better at them if you can. And then you need to mediate and measure all that. It takes a lot of discernment. if you're using all your discernment on the Epstein files and trying to
UFOs
find the hidden codex texts, or, figuring out why Eric Weinstein is wrong or right about something, then you're not doing that. You're not being better. You need to be better. I don't care where you're at. You need to be better, period. There's something in your life you can improve. This is part of Peterson's message, right? You can work on this stuff. And if you work on this stuff, it works out. Yes, let's do more of that. Let's do more of being in community, which I've actually written a book about now. Hopefully it'll be on sale by the end of this week. Just trying to get everybody
Why is
together.
community so important?
Community is important because community, trying and failing to be in community, like trying and failing to be on the phone all the time, or trying and failing to interview somebody who you really look up to, wrote an excellent book that you really want to talk about an idea with, right? And trying and failing to do that is how you learn. And the thing that's missing, and it was Jonathan Peugeot did this because he was on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord, the YouTube channel, and he was on it years ago, 4 years ago now, probably. And he said something very interesting and very long-winded, because he was not as concise as he is now back then, which I maybe incorrectly, but I don't think incorrectly, translated to, you go to church because sometimes you don't want to go to church, and there's always somebody at church you don't want to be around, but you do it anyway. And then you learn to do things you don't want to do with people you don't want to be around. And I'm like, that is the most concise summary of all of the problems we are having in the world right now that I could ever come up with. And that was Jonathan Peugeot's little insight based on a question that he got in that Q&A that really drove a lot of we need to work on this. And we were using all of John Vervaeke's work, his 4 P's of knowledge, which is he's not correct about, by the way. We have a much better model. Thank you very much. And distributed cognition, right? And John, I love John to death,
processing.
But he doesn't understand the implication of that reality. If there are distributed cognitions, what does it mean, right? And if there's distributed cognition and it's through time, then the Bible's the smartest book that's ever been written. Yeah, sorry.
Are you convinced of the truth of the Bible, and what is that truth?
No, the Bible doesn't contain truth as an object. This is another language confusion that we have, right? The Bible contains the patterns that make things true, right? And the patterns that are true in spite, the poor will always be with you, right? And kings sometimes go mad, and you have to mediate. Do you topple the king or not? Because if you topple the king, you might get a worse king, right? That's the French Revolution, right? And we don't learn these lessons. Right? They're
well, that's part of a pattern, then, huh?
Right. So this is one of my deep insights with John's work, is he called them perennial problems. I'm like, but they're not problems, John, because you can't fix them. If you can't fix it, it's not a problem. It's a perennial pattern, right? And so his big example for perennial problems was grief. And he used to talk about it all the time. And I was like, this is great. Grief is a good example, right? And there's 5 stages of grief, and there's all kinds of ways to deal with grief, right? And he uses some Buddhist story about a mustard seed and the Buddha and some woman, right? Whatever. Great. Yeah. All good stuff, right? There's nothing bad about that necessarily. But what that means is that there is a pattern of grief. It is in the world. The odds that you're going to have to go through that pattern are roughly 100%, maybe not. There's a bunch of patterns maybe you'll never hit that definitely exist that other people hit. We need to know how to deal with that. So that's not a truth. I mean, you could say the fact that there are patterns in the world like grief that you're probably going to have to deal with might be a truth. A weird way to talk about it, but fair enough, I guess, if you have to be, reductionist about it. But what do we do? Oh, well, we have a reference book for all of this. Hopefully. I think it's got all of it. I don't know. I haven't read the Bible, so I'm just assuming.
Wait, hold on. Wait, what? You believe? Well, I guess we'd go down a whole segue on the nature of belief and what it means to believe, but you hold it to be an authority, but you have not read it yourself.
I don't hold it to be an authority.
You
I don't
don't,
think
but
you need it.
you don't need it. Okay.
No, I don't think
Because
you
it's
do.
already
I mean,
there. It's in our culture.
right. And it's the basis of a lot of our culture. And my argument would be translating it so that normies could read it was the original sin right there. And that was a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. Like, what do you no, do the masses in Latin, please. It's weird. It's like Vatican II, destruction of the church. The Catholics still can't put it together. Undo whatever went wrong. And I'm not saying Vatican II was wrong, but something went wrong when you instituted Vatican II. I don't know how you get around that conclusion. Find out what that is and fix it. By the way, I'm available. I can just tell you, but whatever. Like, you do you. It's not that hard to figure out, in my opinion. But like, we could, like, we could go back. We could fix whatever was wrong with Vatican II and fix that, at least the Catholic Church.
Would you go to Mass
America,
if that were affected?
Huh?
Would you go to Mass if they
I occasionally
undid
go to
that
Mass
particular
now.
problem? Yeah. Okay.
I went to a nice Latin Mass wedding in Ireland recently for my buddy who does my history videos with me, Adam. He just got married in Ireland, and that was lovely. And then we went to a Mass the following Sunday or a week and a half or whatever after that. And it was atrocious because the Catholics were you basically, I don't know, they were doing the Protestant thing, and they like brought a guitar into church, and I nearly died right then and there. I'm like, what is a guitar doing
It's
in
not
a
a drum
Catholic
set.
church? I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. And then they sang "Lean on Me," and I honestly thought I was just going to expire immediately because even though I didn't really grow up Catholic, I grew up around the Catholics, and I have this deep sense for like this is important. But like I also know how it works, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And it was horrible for me. I've talked about this elsewhere actually on a live stream, but yeah, it was an awful experience to some extent. So the Catholics have followed the Protestants down the rabbit hole. That's what, to some extent, that's what Vatican II was. It was maybe the Protestants are on to something. No, they're not. Don't do that.
So something happened with Peterson and then Vervaeke and then now we have all these influencers that are spawning even more influencers.
Yeah.
And the discourse goes back and forth between personalities and then the issue of the day.
Yep.
I'm wondering, what is the pattern of community that can be implemented via online or via all these different disparate channels that would lead to lasting impact? I don't want to say change, but impact, positive, lasting impact.
Well, I don't know. You'll have to read my book.
Oh, look at that. I just came up with your book for you and you wrote it. Yeah,
no, we used a lot of the notes that we took from dealing with John Vervaeke's wonderful series and sort of built this stuff up. And like I said, my sort of revelation that, I build online communities, among other things. So maybe I can codify that. And it took a very long time to do, both the realization and the codification with our notes. We had like 300 pages of Google Doc notes, right? Plus that we were using that a bunch of us contributed to. And I think the core problem is that until you actually understand the problem, which is people can't discern online who's a good commentator, right, and who's not, right? And so they use weird metrics like, Tucker talked to Daryl Cooper, and like, if Tucker was a little bit smarter, he would have realized Daryl Cooper's an idiot and no one should talk to him. But or at least not about things he doesn't know. So the other discernment that and I can apply this to Peterson himself. Peterson's a wonderful teacher. He's amazing. He was voted one of the best teachers. Like, there was a reason for that, right? Because he's actually rather good. Surprise, surprise. And then a lot of people are like, well, I don't like it when Peterson does this, arc thing because it's more political, whatever that's supposed to mean, right? Or I don't like it when Peterson's doing these conversations with like Dawkins, and I agree, he doesn't particularly handle that very well, in my opinion, because I have a critique video of that on my channel. But that's because he's a good teacher and a good researcher, and he's not a good politician, and he's not a good debater. Period. It's not that hard. Yeah. Peterson doesn't have the discernment to realize this, so he's trying to do everything. Right? It's like,
and then he nopes out. because he's
Right.
overextended.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't think he's even aware that he's trapped in that, because a lot of people are trapped in that. I'm like, because people get pissed off at me all the time because they'll be like, what about this person? And I'll go, oh yeah, I saw 5 minutes of that. That's garbage. And they're like, you can't know from 5 minutes. And I'm like, no, actually you can. It's just you don't have that skill. And I feel bad for you. But also, I certainly do have that skill, and it's not perfect, but it's damn good. And so I'll save the time. Right? Like I'll know 10 minutes into a Joe Rogan thing, if I choose to watch any of that stuff, whether or not it's worth continuing, and more importantly, why. Because a lot of people just watch stuff. And like I need to know, am I watching this stuff for the content that either the guest or the host is providing? Because sometimes hosts are excellent, and you know, like anything this host comes up with when they're doing an interview is going to be good. That happens, right? And sometimes it's the guest, like Randall Carlson. You want to hear Randall Carlson on Joe Rogan? Absolutely, is fascinating insights into archaeological things that I wouldn't find any other way, right?
Yeah.
Or am I looking at it for the So occasionally I have forced myself to sit through like. Peterson talking to Sam Harris. Sam Harris is a drooling moron, from my estimation, in almost everything he's ever talked about online. The guy just says the dumbest things that
Is he astroturfed? I just don't understand his whatever influence he had.
Well, I mean, I think that's the problem. Why can't people discern that whatever he may be good at, and I don't know what that is, his trick is pure enchantment because he grew up around Hollywood types. And he has natural charisma, right? Oh, fair enough. That's great.
Well, if you don't,
I'm very happy for him.
Listening to someone speak very slowly, it's very charismatic.
Well, that's one trick of enchantment. Right, one trick of enchantment, and I've done every time I do this on my Discord server, everyone yells at me. They're like, "Don't ever do that again," because I could enchant people. It's very expensive cognitively for me, and I don't want to. Right, I want people to see my passion. I don't want them to see charisma. I want them to see passion. Right, I want to give them strong signals. These are important. These are not important. This is okay. This is really important. Right, like I want that interaction, but I can, if so choose to do, speak like this and enchant a bunch of people into believing that the core problem of our society is that if we don't terraform Venus and move over there and start a new government based on Plato's Republic, of course, then we are doomed as a culture. The West itself will fall. It's a nonsense. It sounds good though when I say it that way.
Yeah,
it's all nonsense that I made up on the fly. But okay. But can you tell the difference? Because most people can't. That's why. Well, we've lost something. What did we lose? Why is it? We'll say that Jonathan Peugeot is very popular, but a lot of people listen to him, and they're like, I don't even know why I'm listening to you. He's talked about this before. Oh, this guy who's listened to me for 3 years, he doesn't know why. He doesn't understand, right? He has a sense, an intuitive sense, we'll call it, for the importance of the symbolic, but he doesn't have a way to connect the symbolic. And then the problem that arises from that Jonathan's been talking about recently, I forget which, he put out a bunch of material, on other people's podcasts that I've been listening to over the past 3 or 4 days. Well, you end up with people saying things like, well, Boromir in The Lord of the Rings is just like Judas in the Bible. It's like, there's being wrong about things, and then there's whatever that is. And like, no, it's a hard no. Nothing like, right, because they overconnect the symbolism, which is a big danger for sure. Why? Well, they don't have a sense for what we call the poetic way of informing the world. And that's what people are missing. That means I can hand you all the symbolism in the universe, and it ain't going to help you, because you can't tell, we'll say, good symbolism from bad symbolism, which means you'll go and draw that stupid pentagram on the whiteboard over there and summon a demon by accident. That's what that means. And whether that demon is, comes out in AI, and I don't know how familiar your audience is with some of the quote rituals, as they called them, that the OpenAI team was doing during the programming of the AI. But when you learn about that, you're like, oh, technology isn't so disconnected from symbolism after all, now is it? And
Yeah.
wait a minute, what does that mean if the guys who are programming it, so presumably they believe in propositions and hard math and science, are
Mm-hmm.
doing a ritual invocation for something akin to something like AGI, which has no reasonable definition? What does this mean for you think that you live in a world where these people believe that through math they can do this thing? That's not what they're doing.
Mm.
That's what you think they're doing. They're actually having rituals that are very strange and sort of sound a lot like pagan rituals from thousands of years ago somehow. Um, while they're programming this thing, why? If they're programmers, why would they even do such a thing? What's going on? Oh, see how things break down when you look at the details?
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Well, why? Well, why are they doing this? Because they can't discern. Why can't they discern? They can't discern because they don't understand how things are connected in the world. So you can't tell a good connection from a bad connection. So it's like, well, okay, um, is Elon Musk's project to go to Mars better or worse than Eric Weinstein's problem to go to the nearest habitable star 4.5 light years away,
Mm-hmm.
whatever nonsense he was spewing at ARC? Well, how can we tell, right? And Mark goes, they're both dumb ideas. What are you doing? Why don't you know these are equally stupid ideas? Or at least to the extent they're not equally stupid, they're both dumb enough that you shouldn't engage in either.
Mm-hmm. Well, what would be, I mean, there is a symbolic power to the frontier, to going to Mars as a unifying principle
But
that
it's
has a
running
lot
away.
of benefits. It's running
But
away.
it's running away, right? Oh, well, once you frame it that way, it's bad. You're running away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as my friend Manuel Post talks about, it's an identification against. We don't like how the government or the culture or whatever has worked out here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go to a blank slate place. That's weird. It's a weird way to talk about it. No, it's not. It's the right way to talk about it.
Mm.
And build something better. Oh, really? So you think you're God? You think there's a neutral objective space in the world that you can get to even? Like, that's two problems. A, it doesn't exist. B, if it did, you couldn't get there, right? And, you're going to be able to build whatever utopia, which you haven't defined because no one's been able to so far, at least not in concrete enough terms. And that's going to solve whatever problems you've maybe listed, maybe have never listed, that you're trying to solve from here. This is all absurd. Like every piece of their because this is the problem. Somebody will go, well, certainly there's some merit to the fact that things are bad here and now on the earth. Or even like, well, we're destroying the earth with with drilling and mining and carbon production or whatever nonsense they're on about this week, which isn't even necessarily wrong. It's just irrelevant, right? And I'm like, okay, maybe, but the solution isn't to identify against it and go try to find a neutral space that you could magically get to and then play God in that space and build something. That's still not the solution. The solution is we're stuck here with what we have and we could make it better. Can't we do that instead? Like this is the same problem we were talking about earlier with we can't go back. No, we can. It's actually really easy. We actually know how because we've already done it even. Like it sounds like way easier than inventing something new. Do you know why? Because it is. It's way easier to go back to doing something the old way than it is to find a new way to do something. I know this directly from computers. Like they used to talk about don't reinvent the wheel, right? All the time in programming. And it's like, fair enough. Use the stuff that's already available that works. Yeah, use the stuff that's already available that does the thing that you need done. Sure, right? And community, if you try to get together with people instead of splitting off and forming your own little cult, whether it's a YouTube channel or a forum in Reddit or a subreddit or whatever nonsense, a new platform or, whatever, then eventually you'll kind of figure out how to get along with people who suck and who do bad things and who are imperfect. And it turns out to be everybody I've ever met so far that I'm describing. Like everybody sucks about something. It's like so annoying. But you learn to figure out how to leverage that and build something bigger than two or three or four of you could build on your own.
Hmm.
That's how you build a world. That's what culture and society is, right? It's something bigger than all of you that you're all contributing positively to in whatever way you can. And once you have that sense, once you try to build a community, then you gain that experience with the poetic way of informing the world. Another way to do this is to just garden, grow a bean, as my friend Sally Jo says. She's the artist for my book, by the way. So this lovely art is all hers. Grow a bean. Like, you'll learn real quick about the constraints of the world. Like, we tried to grow tomatoes this year, and the tomatoes didn't work out. And it wasn't until we went to the farmer's market, and this guy who grows an ungodly amount of tomatoes, he said, yeah, my entire crop got wiped out. And I've been doing this for 20 years. It's like, what? He teaches at the college. He's like, yeah, God decided this wasn't a good year for tomatoes in South Carolina. Fair enough. That was his reasoning. This guy, he's as academic as you can get in agriculture. And he's still like, oh, I guess God was like, nah, no tomatoes for South Carolina this year. Okay. It sounded reasonable to me. I didn't, because he said, like, yeah, there were water problems. Yeah, there was heat problems. But like, we normally deal with this. We live here. This isn't it wasn't that unusual a year weather-wise, but for some reason we don't even understand, because the science doesn't explain most things. Doesn't explain anything important, by the way. Tomatoes didn't grow.
Well, it explains how to mix different tomato varieties. It explains some things. Science isn't all bad.
It explains observations, which is how proper science is to be done. It's supposed to proceed from observations. Brett Weinstein was actually really good with this years ago. He talked about the difference between, we'll say, an untestable random idea, which is 90% of ideas, and then a hypothesis, which can be falsified, and then a theory, which is just the hypothesis that has been falsified the least or something, right? Like, it's the winner at the top of the pile. That's proper science. And when you leave that ontology, because that is an ontology, in place, that hierarchy in place, it works very well. And then if you recognize that it's not science until someone's reproduced the experiment, oh, the replication crisis never happens. If you'd just been following your own stupid rules, you wouldn't have a replication crisis, science people. So don't come here and preach to me about, believe the science when you don't even believe the science. You haven't been following your own rules. I'm not going to listen to you. You're a lunatic at that point.
Well, speaking of experiments, the Fourth Estate has failed.
Yeah.
And here we are. You're on my channel. It's just this node. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not good. It's good enough that you deigned to attend to it.
You're good.
So what am I doing? I just reached 100,000 subscribers. I'm trying to figure out, why am I doing this? What is it for?
Congratulations. Yeah, well, look, I think that early on in the meaning crisis days, there was a lot of talk about the loss of sense making. Jordan Hall used to talk about that quite a bit too. And again, he also did Game B, which hurts my soul. There was a loss of sense making. But again, this is, you don't know how to poetically inform the world. Did you notice that the Fourth Estate collapsed? Because I think, I'm one of the few people on the internet that even has a video on it, as near as I can tell, at least, whenever I put that out. As of that date, I couldn't find anybody else talking about it that way. So a lot of people they don't know what they're caught up in. And fair enough. Like, the things, and, we could sit there and go back and forth about, well, things aren't as bad as you think. And that's true in some areas, but things are a lot worse than people think. People are like, oh, the US is going to collapse. And I'm like, no, Europe's going to be in war long before anything happens to the US. That could be days around the corner, the way these people are like, oh, we're going to fight Russia. You don't even have an army. Okay. Good luck with that. Let me know how that works out. I hope we stay out of it. Just remove all the US troops from foreign countries tomorrow, right? So there's a lot of weird things going on, and then people need to make sense of them, and the Fourth Estate has failed them because it collapsed, and the universities were ostensibly pretending, at least, to provide answers or solutions to that, and they're not, right? Clearly, right? We all know that. Whether or not they ever could is a different different argument. We have a whole 6-hour video on that someday if you wanted. So what do we do, right? Like, government doesn't work the way we expected now that we're looking at it a little bit more closely. Maybe that's our problem. We're looking too closely at the government and realizing, hey, it doesn't work at all the way we thought, right? It's not as smooth and stable as we presupposed.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not, I mean, it has to do something. It's not going to be neutral, but it's definitely going to be, you can't sit there and say, because like Trump fell for the COVID thing. Before COVID, Trump, this is hysterical. You want symbolism. Trump was going to reopen the government on Easter. He announced that. We're going to reopen the government on Easter. We're going to reopen the country on Easter. COVID's going to be over by Easter. What a weird thing to say, huh? Oh, and then it doesn't happen because he gets fooled by, we'll just call them evil people for short. Oh no, accuracy and precision. That's my thing, not shortness. By the evil people, and now we have a fake news virus scam. But that's not even consistent because I'm from New England. I go up to New England, right? I drive from South Carolina to New England. What happens to me on my journey for 4 years, really? For 4 straight years, what happens is no one's wearing masks in South Carolina. This was over 90 days here, guys. 90 days restaurants were reopened. Every time I go north by 50 miles, more people are wearing masks when I get out of my car and get gas or whatever. Every time. And I'm like, well, this is weird. Well, I've got relatives who have had COVID like 6 times. I'm like, what? Like, okay. And they're still paranoid about it 4 years later. And I have an illness that I've had like 15 years. I have an immune system illness, which is not an immunosuppressant illness. So I'm not at danger for COVID or anything like that, actually, ironically. It's an overactive immune problem. So if anything, I'm kind of immune to viruses and stuff. I have other problems instead, which are much worse. They all know this, right? Oh, how was your trip? Oh, I'm feeling a little under the weather. Jump back physically. This is a year ago. This is 4 years after COVID, right? Jump back physically and you don't have COVID, do you? And I'm like, we don't have COVID. Oh, you guys got it late. No, the first cases of COVID were in South Carolina in Camden. It just, we didn't panic about it, and no one got shots, or at least no one I knew got shots, because we were all like, hell no. And it's over. It's gone. Our restaurants they weren't fully reopened in 90 days, but they reopened in 90 days. And there were little problems, like the city of Columbia, where I used to go grocery shopping, required masks. So it was like going to the grocery store having to wear a mask. And I'm like, this is dumb, and eventually the freaking governor stepped in and they actually passed a state law saying cities could not require masks statewide. It's like, you get the little things, right? Because down south, the governments are very big. The state governments are very big on, cities can do what they want. Towns can do what they want. But even the governor of South Carolina was like, all right, that's enough. Because he has to work in Columbia. He's like, I'm not wearing masks here. This is my state. We're done with, because it wasn't every town. It was Columbia, a little place where I live. We didn't have masks. They didn't have a mask mandate here. I think a couple towns had mask mandates in the state. After 3 years, the governor, I think it was 3 years, the governor did away with that. He said, no, we're not letting you do mask. You do everything else, but we're not letting you do mask mandates. This is dumb. Like little things. The government is not a consistent thing, even at the state and local level. And that's, Columbia's unfortunately the capital. It's full of lefties, basically, right? Yeah. And the conservatives
they like to congregate around powerful places, ley lines.
Yeah. Well, and the conservatives will tolerate the lefties. It's the lefties that are intolerant. And I think because people are binary thinkers, because look, I mean, most people aren't capable of thinking about 3 things at once. Fair enough, but maybe don't try, right? People think in terms of left and right, and they're just ignoring all the data. Like in the United States, what's the biggest classification for voter registration in the United States? Do you know? In almost every state. I think it's in every state.
What do you mean classification? Like demographic?
No,
like
Democrat,
what part? Yeah, okay.
Republican. How are they registered?
I don't know.
Independent. Independent. Okay, yeah. So in other words, if you poll the voters en masse in the United States as to whether they're on the left or the right, almost an overwhelming majority said we're neither. So why are we putting political narratives in left and right again? That's a false dichotomy. Anytime anybody says that, they're stuck in a false dichotomy. You're stuck in binary thinking, and you're automatically wrong about all the conclusions you will make from that point forward. I'm sorry, but you're wrong.
Well,
now,
there is a left, and there's a not left. There's a cluster.
No. The left is an identification against. And so what happened to people like you, and I'll give you the difference right here, right now. You ready? Because this actually came up. So
bring it on.
A good friend of mine who is a conservative and has always been a conservative and grew up in the South, he was talking about how, early in his computer career, he was in the Northwest. I think he was in Portland or Seattle, one of the two. Doesn't matter. Same pits of leftism, as far as I can tell.
There it is. He said leftism.
Yeah, well, but it is. It's an identification against. Right? He said, "Oh yeah, I heard about Evergreen." Right? He said, "Yeah, somebody told me about that," and I went, "Well, that'll never work." And he just went on with his day. That's what a conservative would do. A conservative wouldn't be for or against Evergreen. They'd be like, "Well, that's a dumb idea. That'll fail." And because they know, they have a grounding. They know intuitively what's going to work. They're not right all the time, but they're right almost all the time. And I'll take right almost all the time over perfection. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the better is what I like to say, right? So that's a true conservative. So the fact that, and I feel bad for you and for Brat and for all of a bunch of my friends, that the extremists took over the left and took it more left. But that doesn't mean that you're not leftists. It just means that the left can go much further left than you realized. And are you any more grounded? So like Tim Pool. Tim Pool was a freaking anarchist. And I was listening to him, during the whole fake news virus thing. That's how I got all my information, was from Tim Pool, because I knew he was doing the right thing with respect to that. I had a lot of hope that he could fix the problem, but he can't scale. Fair enough. Scaling's really hard. Almost no one can do it, right? So you hear his stories from 2019 of Occupy Wall Street and what happened to him in Occupy Wall Street. And you're like, oh, yeah, of course. And so he's moved into the moderate position. He's not a conservative. I think people are having this battle now. They're like, online conservatives. And I'm like, let me explain something to you, son. Okay. Fox News, online conservatives, they're moderates. There's no conservatives trying to change the narrative. Conservatives know better than to try to do that, with very few exceptions. So there's no equivalent to William Buckley. Like, what are you talking? He was the last conservative, maybe Mitt Romney, before he got completely destroyed by trying to run for president and not understanding that leftists aren't principled, and they weren't going to follow any set of rules. You weren't going to win. You weren't going to beat them at their game because they weren't going to play a game. They were going to do whatever it took to win, and they were going to lie, cheat, and steal to do it, right? Oh, okay. Maybe Mitt Romney, but maybe. But publicly, conservatives? No, they're all in hiding. I know conservatives. They're all in hiding. They're like, we're not getting on YouTube. We're not talking to people. We're not going to go on TV. What do you hide? That doesn't work. They know it doesn't work. They don't want to play the manipulation game.
Don't they want to connect and promulgate their ideas, their lifestyle?
They're busy building things. They're busy building things. They're running farms. They're busy making sure infrastructure exists for the leftists to have their crazy arguments about whether or not it should exist. They're just busy. A lot of them are just busy, and some of them.
So what are we doing up in here then?
Huh?
What are we doing up in here, up in this internet thing?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I'm trapped in the middle of the internet like you, and I'm not going to presume that, as somebody will say on the internet who has been like way more on the internet than 99.9% of the people that you're going to see on the internet, that I understand what it is that we're wrapped up in the internet. But I can say, because of my experience and because of my expertise, that I'm going to do my best to make it better, even though I know there's no hope for me to make that big a change. But, I mean, getting people off the internet is a big deal with me. So I have a very good friend whose wedding I attended in Texas a couple of years ago. He's not on Discord anymore. And I'm sad because I miss him. But
Yeah.
also, he's busy at his job now. Before, he was in the middle of figuring out whether or not to get a divorce and figuring out why his job sucked and being miserable and unhappy and playing video games and feeling guilty about playing video games because he knew what Peterson had said. And he's struggling with all of this. Now he's not doing that. He calls me every couple of months, maybe on the phone, which I don't like talking on the phone. Right? Which is fine. I love talking to him. Right? I don't see him on Discord anymore. I'm so happy that's the case. I'm like thrilled. Like, please get off of the online. Please. It's not good for people. Right? But somebody has to be on the online to point the way. And if that's you, hopefully, and me, and that's it, that's still better. I'll take the win. Thank you very much. Because a lot of people do this thing where they're like, well, Mark, your navigating pattern channel is small and nobody sees it. And we're being suppressed by a bunch of people, by the way, who are deliberately downvoting videos and trolling and doing all this nonsense behind the scenes on Rumble too. By the way, Rumble is not immune to any of that, right? And the same with my Twitter, right? It's all being suppressed. I know some of the characters who are doing it. I just don't particularly care because I'll just outlast them. So whatever, this will resolve itself eventually, right? But I'm like, but you don't understand. From my perspective, if I try to help people and they don't receive the help, I've my job is done. Like I don't need them to succeed. That's not my job. Is to try, and if I fail, I fail. But if I don't try, I get nothing. If I try, I get all the points. If I succeed, I don't get any additional points other than the residual points of living in a better world with better people, which would be ultimately great. But it's not like at the end times when you get judged, it's going to be like, you only saved 4 people, and the person who saved 6 people gets more. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen, right? You're going to get the same points if you try than if you succeed. So what difference does it make? A lot of people are tied up because they're materialists. They think the material is primary, not that they don't believe in non-material things, but they think material is primary. That's a materialist. They think the success is what matters. And I'm like, no. It's your work effort that matters. That's what matters. It matters what you do. It matters what you encounter. It matters whether or not you're, we'll say, oriented towards the right things. It doesn't matter if you fail. Like it doesn't make a difference. It's, and you can see that pattern in the story of Job, right? You can see these patterns where there's an apparent failure, but all points are awarded anyway. So it's to teach you that materialism is not the thing. The things you're using to measure are not the correct measures for success in the world, or at least success from a religious aspect, right? And so when I go to Ireland, and because we were in Ireland and I'd never been to Ireland, we wanted to stay a while, right? And I attend this lovely wedding, and then I circle back a few days later to help my friend with his apartment, right? Let's put the table together, let's put your bed together, let's, I want to see the apartment anyway, right? And he's like blown away, and of course they feed us. I'm like, oh, I think I got the better end of that deal, but I'm a little part, like you feed me. That's the best thing in the world. Like you pay me $1 million. I don't care. You feed me. That's a big deal. Cause I was homeless and starving. And like, that's actually a big deal to be able to eat a meal with somebody else. That to me is super valuable. Right. So like, he's like blown away. He's like, oh my goodness. Right. And our other friends who I got to meet, who are European anyway, who had only met on Discord, they were like, wait, maybe we should have stayed too. And I'm like, you probably should have helped him move in, like, but they didn't. And that's fine. It's not a ding on them or anything. They're good people and all that. But like, that was a big deal. And to me, it was like, well, of course, that's what you do, because that's how I grew up. Like, I used to help everybody move because I was the only one with a car back in the day. So I was moving every one of my college friends multiple times a year, right? All around the same time. So that to me is just kind of natural, right? Like, oh, it's moving season. Let's go move people around the city of Boston. Like, this is what we do. We have the car. They don't have to rent a truck, or maybe they rented a truck and then, they need our help, hauling things around. this is like normal to me, but it's not normal to everybody. And I understand that. But like just offering help, right? Just being available for people, like sitting there alone. That's actually in my book. Sitting there alone, but being available, that's points right there. No one needs to show up, right? You still get the points. It's still a good thing. The goodness has still manifested in the world, even though you don't see the impact immediately. The goodness is still there, right? Better still happened. It's better that someone's available than someone's not available, period, whether they get used or not. And it's tough for people to wrap their heads around because we're all individualist, materialist objectivists. And like we have bad measures for the world because we're all stuck in the science thing, which comes out of academia, which is the result of the destruction of the monasteries. It's all tied together. And the thing is too, we can argue about, and I do have a video on this. You can argue about, well, did the individualism cause the materialism? Did the materialism cause the individualism? Did either one of them cause the objectivism? Where we're just looking at the world as like objects, right? That's our primary mode. It doesn't matter. Like you hit one, you get the other two for free. It's like buy one, get two free, but it's not good. So like, why not just avoid all three all the time? Because you have to, that's the other thing, you have to fight this. I think a lot of the problem is when the fake news virus scam comes along, this stupid COVID thing, and not that there wasn't a real virus, but all the propaganda around it was a lie. It was all a ridiculous lie, right? When that hits, we lose skills because we're not practicing them. I noticed that in myself. I went to a game in South Carolina to watch the Patriots because there was a Patriots fan who was a friend of ours. It wasn't on TV, so we had to do this special thing to watch it online. Don't tell anybody. So he set all that up, and they invited us over. And they came and brought out the food. And I was so engrossed in watching the Patriots game, and I'm not even a particularly, big football fan or anything, that I forgot that manners would dictate they're not going to touch the food until their guests touch the food. And they were waiting for me to eat before they ate. And they were all hungry. And actually, I was not. So it's like I lost that skill of manners and politeness that is required for people to get along, and like, I'm sure they forgave me and all that. It's not a big deal. But also, like, I noticed, I'm like, oh, shoot, despite all my efforts, this hit me too, right? It hit all of us, whether we wanted to or not. This idea of social distancing, which is pure evil and has no redeeming quality. Let me be clear about that. The idea of social distancing, not physical distancing, maybe we can justify that, although I got my questions. Social distancing is pure evil. That caused us to lose social skills. It's a kind of explicit. Social distancing. Don't be social. Distance yourself from no, never do that. That's always evil. It's always the wrong answer. Don't do that, right? But it causes you, because you're unpracticed, to lose skills.
Yeah.
And some of those skills, like getting along with people, when you're not doing that, you're eroding your ability to poetically inform the world, which tells you what's a good interaction, what's a bad interaction, who's a good person to listen to. Should you listen to this Benjamin Boyce guy? Like, I don't know. Like, of course you should, because he's a good guy. And the fact that people can't tell the difference, it just blows my mind. And even the people who have been, we'll say, riding with me on the Discord in our project for 5+ years still fall into this. And I'm like, oh, wait, do you listen to the things I teach you? Like, why don't you know this? It's an easy way to do this, right? And it's not easy, and I understand that now. I mean, I'm always a little bombastic and hyperbolic, and especially with my friends, because you got to keep people entertained, right? You can't talk about hefty things like the meaning crisis and what I call the intimacy crisis, and just be super serious about it all the time, because you'll burn people out, emotionally, and you got to kind of mix it up, and it's not easy. We take it for granted because some of us were born into it. Like, I was born in a politeness and manners society, and the millennials were not. And so they have a big hole. So who's in the most trouble? Is it the people that will say Jonathan Peugeot in the symbolic world, or even Paul Vanderklay helping, who are what, basically they're not in a meaning crisis. They had a crisis of faith. And there's a difference. And the difference is people who grew up like me with no church, right? That they're in a meaning crisis because they don't necessarily, although I got lucky apparently somehow, they don't necessarily have the way to do the symbolic, poetic informing of the world, so they can't go to church. It doesn't work for them because they can't connect to it at all because they don't have the underlying skill set. They never had it in many cases. That's a bigger problem. Now, the crisis of faith people, maybe they were, going to church, and at 12 they found dinosaurs. That's a very common one, right? And so they dropped out of church, and then they heard Peterson, but that won't necessarily, although it often does, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be able to go to church and just walk right in, because maybe they lost some skills. And there's a wonderful story. I think the guy's name is Jacob Kashir, and he did a talk with John Vervaeke probably 5 years ago now, one of his very early talks. And he has this unbelievable description that really changed the way I thought about all this stuff with the meaning crisis in particular. He said this is funny, he was stuck in Athens, Greece, during COVID. And I was like, please, can this be me? Like, I want to be stuck in Athens. Sounds wonderful, right? So he's stuck in Athens. He's in the middle of the meaning crisis. He's tried, psychedelics and all that, because those nutbags talk about psychedelics. It's not good.
Yeah, they like those. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he said he goes to this Greek Orthodox church, and he walks in and he sees all this stuff, right? And I don't know if you've been in a Greek Orthodox church in particular, but my goodness, there's a lot going on, right? And he says, nothing happened until I started walking around the city. Right. And then he makes the connection between the patterns in the church and the patterns in the city. And it's all there for him all of a sudden. Better than psychedelics. And you don't have to risk taking psychedelics. Right. That transformed my understanding of what was wrong with people, like where they're stuck. Oh, they can't see the symbolism. They don't know what a good pattern is and what a bad pattern is. They don't understand these things. And because they don't, rather than fighting the corruption, they contribute to it. Rather accidentally. It's not, but maybe the solution to that is don't try to get involved in politics. Like, don't even talk about politics if you're not up on it and you're not good at discerning who a good politician is and who a bad politician is, or what a good political statement is and what a bad political statement is. Maybe just stay out of that realm entirely. Right? Like that's fair. Like maybe don't try to solve the national debt crisis using stablecoin because you've traded Bitcoin once or twice. Like, I don't know. You're right. Maybe don't try to fight the WEF directly, which is dumb, by the way, and start this goofy ARC conference for no reason. I thought the first ARC conference, Jonathan Pichot's speech, was one of the best speeches about anything ever, because he just eviscerated the whole project in a very nice way. But like, yeah, I mean, maybe stay in your lane to some extent, like do what you're good at, especially if you're really good at it. There's very few people who are really good teachers. John Vervaeke is a really good teacher. He's very good at answering questions. We had a lot of interactions with him on his meditation live stream. And we were able to ask him questions and he gave great answers. But at the end of the day, probably not going to make a great politician. And he stays out of that for the most part. So that's good. Peterson doesn't. Peterson's all over the place. Like, what is he doing?
It's got to go. Mark, I don't know how I stumbled upon you. You made a snarky comment. I checked out your videos. I'm like, well, this is a guy just communicating something uniquely and importantly. So I reached out to you and you graced me with your presence today. Where can people find you? What are they going to find? And I'll make sure to publish this after your book is printed so people can follow the link that will be down there in the description to go get it. Could you tell us what the book's about and what your other work is about that people can interact with?
Sure. So I've got a Discord server called The Mark of Wisdom, and I've got YouTube channel called Mark of Wisdom Navigating Patterns. You can just put in Navigating Patterns. That was the old name. We had to reband. We were getting too many knitting groups showing up in the search. And what I'm trying to do is give people models and ways of understanding words and phrases, for example, so that they can resolve their sense making. And that includes things like our knowledge engine model. And then I have the markofwisdom.org website, and we have a store there, obviously, with a bunch of artwork from some artists that are in on our project, because we're very big on artists. Most of them are refugees from Paul Vanderklay's little project there. So they get chased off of that and came to us, and some of them came all the way from Eric Weinstein, who also ignored all the artists, right? And we're trying to do a lot of these things at a very low level, because I don't believe that I can make a video that explains the entire meaning crisis and how to fix it or something to a large group of people. So we're very focused on what can we talk about today. So I have these Friday live streams that I do at 7 p.m. Eastern on my channel. That kind of ties together some of the concepts of the channel into today's stuff, like whatever I heard for the week usually. And usually I make it a theme. Obviously, I'm learning to do a bunch of stuff when I do that. So it's a little inconsistent, but it's got a nice pirate theme to it with pirate music and pirate animation and stuff. And, wrote this wonderful book with the help of friends I met online, to edit. And hopefully that link will be up on our store by the end of this week, maybe by the end of the day, but it's always a struggle when you work with a bunch of people, right? And we have the petersonsphere.com website, which talks more broadly about the influence of Peterson, and I've got a nice timeline up there of his impact, at least from my perspective. And we're working on other books. We're working on a board game to try to help people to cooperate better and to understand these things better. And if you engage with the Navigating Wisdom Communities text, there's going to be a workbook for that available, so that to step you through the process of trying to not necessarily build a community yourself, but maybe you start the community and then you participate wherever you belong, which seems to be the big problem, right? Everybody wants to tell everybody else that on the hero's journey and they can be the leader of a community or whatever, and that's false. That's not true. But you can probably have a really important and interesting, vital role to play with other people, and if you can find that would be better. And we're all about people being better. So come in and join us on one of the live streams or watch all the videos. I've got a bunch of model videos in there. It's over 4 years old at this point, so there's quite a few videos. And give feedback. Let me know. Like, put some comments in. This is unclear, whatever. Right? I try to be rigorous about what I'm doing and careful. And I'm sure I screw up plenty of stuff, but usually nobody notices or something, or no one's telling me, so that's fine. But yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people, and we're trying to help the most in need people, who are the people who are stuck online in these little online, cults that are just going to tell them maybe something important and true and interesting, maybe, most likely not, right? And then that's going to run out, and then they're going to hit the next one, and I want to boff them away from that
pattern.
Yeah, I want to disrupt that pattern, exactly, and get them into the real world and show them how to be there. And the next book that hopefully we're going to do is on manners, because I think we've lost manners, and we probably need that so that we can all figure out how to cooperate together, despite the fact that people suck. People are terrible. They're awful. They're awful. They cause all the problems of the world caused by people. You can understand why people are extinctionists.
God,
right?
God forgive us. God guide us.
Yes.
Mark, how do I pronounce your last name? Because there's this V in there that's upsetting my mouth.
The French are the worst people on the planet. Oh, my goodness. All the problems come from France, including my last name. So we've Americanized it. So we usually pronounce it Lefebvre, but in France, it would be Lefebvre,
Lefebvre.
Just don't call me late for dinner. But yeah, I don't know what the B thing is all about. It's a silent B, apparently. I can't. There's no accounting for the French. I had high hopes that the French Canadians were going to save the world. And when I met Jonathan Peugeot at Thunder Bay, I asked him point blank, and he's like, "No, the French Canadians are all confused." And I'm like, "No, we're God's chosen people. We have to lead everybody to the
Lead
promised land."
someone somewhere at some
Said
point.
no.
Mark, it was such a pleasure hanging out with you. I'll send people to your channel so you can get more views and more interaction, more
Thank you.
importantly.
That
Well,
would
thank
be
you very
great.
much.
Thank you.
Cool, man.